Chapter 62. As soon as Chi Feng's words fell, everyone gasped in shock. They had long heard that Chi Feng was indifferent, but they didn't expect him to be so overbearing. Principal Chi, you said that they're your friends, but I'm afraid you don't even know who they are, right? Fan Jinji said in a joking tone. Is that important? Chi Feng asked back coldly. You, Fan Jinji, didn't expect Chi Feng to be so overbearing. His face immediately turned gloomy. Everyone disperse. Chi Feng didn't care about him and glanced at the crowd. Everyone was stunned and couldn't react. Didn't you hear what I said? Chi Feng said again. Everyone came to their senses and immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Qin Yuhu and Qin Yulong were furious, but when they saw Chi Feng's sharp eyes, they couldn't help but retreat. In the end, they could only leave with hatred. Since Chi Feng had appeared, it was impossible to kill Nie Tian. In the blink of an eye, only Chi Feng, Fan Jinji, Nie Tian, and the others were left. Chi Feng, you're good. Let's wait and see, Fan Jinji said hatefully. In the end, he could only choose to leave. Because of Chi Feng's arrival, the disturbance was instantly resolved. This was the power of a powerhouse. I'm leaving, Chi Feng said coldly. He didn't stop and turn to leave. However, he suddenly paused and looked at Nie Tian. You're very talented. I hope you can restrain yourself in the future. Don't provoke people you shouldn't provoke. Otherwise, you will only harm yourself. After saying that, Chi Feng took another step. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Is that a piece of advice? Chi Feng stopped and said, sort of. Nie Tian looked at Chi Feng's figure and shook his head with a smile. He didn't expect that one day he would be protected by others and have to accept such advice. Chi Feng. At this moment, Qiu Shan suddenly spoke. Hearing Qiu Shan's voice, Chi Feng's figure paused. His expression changed, and surprise flashed in his eyes. Big brother Qiu Shan. Chi Feng suddenly turned around. When he saw Qiu Shan's face clearly, he was ecstatic. Qiu Shan was extremely excited. He nodded slightly, and tears seemed to flow out of his eyes. Brother Qiu Shan, it's really you. Chi Feng was even more excited. He no longer had his previous indifference. He took a step forward and hugged Qiu Shan tightly. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled. He didn't expect these two to be old acquaintances. Chi Feng. Qiu Ling suddenly thought of something and said with surprise, You are Uncle Qiu Shan's sworn brother. Yes, Chi Feng was Qiu Shan's sworn brother from all those years ago at Tyrant Cloud Academy, and they were best friends. Brother Qiu Shan, where have you been all these years? Do you know that I've been looking for you? Chi Feng said excitedly. Brother, it's a long story. Let's talk somewhere else. Qiu Shan calmed down a little, and his heart was filled with many emotions. It was very rare that one of his old friends still cared about him so much. Yes. Principal Chi, it's a joyous occasion for you to reunite with your old friends. I'll prepare a banquet for you at the first-grade restaurant. Let's go now. Jean DeBeo was extremely surprised. He could tell that Qiu Shan and Chi Feng's relationship was not ordinary, so he quickly said, All right, good. I'll welcome Brother Qiu Shan at the first-grade restaurant today. Chi Feng repeatedly said yes, very happy. Back then, at Tyrant Cloud Academy, Qiu Shan had taken care of Chi Feng. Not only did he stand up for him, but he also gave him pointers in martial cultivation. It could even be said that without Qiu Shan, there would not be Chi Feng today. Chi Feng was originally a cheerful and optimistic person, but he gradually became indifferent. This was also related to Qiu Shan's sudden departure back then. Now that he had reunited with his old friend, he was naturally very happy. Fatty, what kind of place is the first-grade restaurant? Didn't you want to welcome me? Nie Tian asked as he bumped into Jean DeBeo. Jean DeBeo chuckled and said, The first-grade restaurant, the #1 restaurant in Blue Cloud City. You know when you get there, boss. Everyone followed Jean DeBeo. After leaving Tyrant Cloud Academy, they went straight to the first-grade restaurant. The first-grade restaurant is indeed a bit luxurious. 10 minutes later, Nie Tian looked at the super luxurious restaurant in front of him and sighed softly. Nie Tian had seen the world in his previous life. He had seen many magnificent buildings, but in terms of luxury, The restaurant in front of him was definitely in the top 10 of all the buildings he had seen. Stepping into the first-grade restaurant, Niet Tion further felt the luxury of the interior. 7 treasures glazed lamps, exquisite stone pillars with dragon carvings, exquisite jade steps, and all kinds of treasures hanging on the walls. Even the floor under his feet was inlaid with a layer of purple gold, looking even more dazzling. The first-grade restaurant stood out in one word: luxury. The first-grade restaurant was a restaurant opened by the Jean family. It was known as the #1 restaurant in the imperial city. From a certain point of view, it was the symbol of the Jean family as the richest family in the imperial city. Jean de Bayo directly asked for the 2 most luxurious private rooms. Qiushan Qifeng had a private room to himself, while the rest of Niet Tion and the others used the other private room. Qiushan Qifeng reunited with his old friend. There must be endless things to talk about, so the others did not disturb him. After a while, a sumptuous feast was served. There were more than 100 dishes, and all of them were made from various spiritual ingredients. Even Niet Tion could not help but be astonished when he saw it. "Fatty, this meal costs at least 1,000 gold coins, right?" Xiaoling asked as she ate. Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "This is the first-grade restaurant's top-notch feast. I don't know how much it costs, but it should be at least 100,000 gold coins." 100,000 gold coins! Xiaoling almost vomited the food she had just eaten. Her face was filled with astonishment. 100,000 gold coins was almost equivalent to the annual income of a large family in a region. For example, the Nie family that Niet Tion came from did not even have a yearly income of 10,000 gold coins. This meal was luxurious to the extreme. Hee, this is a piece of cake. As long as Sister Ling is happy eating, it's all worth it. Jean de Bayo chuckled, looking like he did not care. Niet Tion smiled faintly. As someone who had lived 2 lives, how could he not see Jean de Bayo's intentions towards Xiaoling? He said, "Fatty, thank you this time. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to get away. It's my duty to work for boss." Jean de Bayo smiled and said, "If it wasn't for boss, my fat body would have been lost in Mount Tyrant Cloud today." Xiaoling blushed and said seriously, "De Bayo, I'm sorry. I thought you ran away and even called you a coward." Jean de Bayo chuckled, looking at Xiaoling's blushing face full of self-blame. He was extremely happy. "Big brother Fatty, Yuro wants to eat like this every day in the future. Can I?" Nie Yuro, who was eating happily at the side, suddenly asked. "Sure, definitely no problem." Jean de Bayo chuckled. Thank you, big brother Fatty." Nie Yuro nodded fiercely with a proud expression. When Nie Yuro called him Big Brother Fatty, Niet Tion could only smile speechlessly. Halfway through the sumptuous feast, the door to the private room opened, and 3 figures appeared. Apart from Qiushan and Qifeng, there was also a slightly plump middle-aged man with a kind smile. Chapter 63. Hearing Jean de Bayo's address, Niet Tion already knew that the chubby middle-aged man was Jean de Bayo's father. Niet Tion and the others stood up one after another. This was the minimum etiquette. "Don't be polite, you all sit down," Ji Mingxin said with a smile, looking approachable. Ji Mingxin looked at Niet Tion and said with a smile, "This is Mr. Nie, right? Mr. Jean, you don't have to be polite, just call me Niet Tion." Niet Tion smiled faintly. "Dad, I'm already boss Niet Tion's little brother. You could just call me Niet Tion. Calling me Mr. Nie is too polite." Jean de Bayo also said, "How can I do that?" Ji Mingxin said with a smile, "It's rare to see a teenage alchemist. Not to mention Mr. Nie is a second-rank alchemist. This Mr. is still necessary." Ji Mingxin had already seen Qiushan. It was Qiushan who told him that Niet Tion was a second-rank alchemist. "Boss, you are a second-rank alchemist." Jean de Bayo looked stunned. Niet Tion not only defeated Qin Yuhu, but he was also a second-rank alchemist. This talent was too monstrous. Niet Tion smiled faintly and nodded slightly. After confirming Niet Tion's identity as a second-rank alchemist, Qifeng immediately lost his composure. He stepped forward and said excitedly, "Mr. Nie, please save big brother Qiushan." As long as you can restore Big Brother Qiushan's essence meridian, I'm willing to do anything for you. Tian smiled speechlessly. Treating Qiushan was just a matter of raising his hand, but now it seemed like he had to ask for a big reward from others. Tian said indifferently, I've already promised to treat Qiushan, so I will definitely do what I said. I'm not doing this to get anything. I'm just purely repaying Qiushan and Miss Ling, for giving us a ride. Qifeng was slightly taken aback. His identity was the Vice Dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy. He was definitely a top figure in the Blue Cloud Empire. Even the Blue Cloud Emperor had to respectfully call him Mr. Qi. Now he took the initiative to make a promise, but Tian didn't care at all. Qifeng suddenly felt a sense of loss. Thank you, Mr. Nia. Qiushan nodded heavily and bowed in thanks. Tian nodded slightly and did not say anything else. Afterwards, Jin Mingxin and the others discussed for a while and decided to let Qiushan and Xiuling temporarily live in the Jin family. Tian had nowhere else to go, so he temporarily settled down in the Jin residence. After the meal, Qifeng returned to Tyrant Cloud Academy first, while Tian and the others went to Jin Mansion with Jean de Bayo. Jean de Bayo arranged a unique little courtyard for Tian in the Jin Mansion, not far from Qiushan and Xiuling. After settling Yuro down, Tian returned to his room. Originally, Tian planned to go to the Alchemist Guild first, but it was already late, so he could only go tomorrow. Back in his room, Tian sat cross-legged. He did not rest for even a moment and immediately entered into a state of cultivation. Today, against Qin Yuhu, Tian used an astral soul. Within a short period of time, he was unable to draw an astral soul, so he wanted to improve his strength further. In the battle with Qin Yuhu, Tian urgently felt the weakness of his own strength. Especially in front of a powerhouse like Fan Jinji, he practically had no strength to retaliate. Without much hesitation, Tian directly consumed 3 blood essence pills that Jean de Bayo gave him. Blood essence pill, a rank 2 spirit pill. Not only could it rapidly replenish a martial artist's blood chi, but it also had a certain improvement effect on the martial artist's physique. Rich young masters loved to eat this the most. 9 Extremes War God Art. First level, Metal Extreme, Yellow Heavenly Realm. After the blood essence pills entered his body, Tian immediately started circulating the 9 Extremes War God Art. The 9 Extremes War God Art was a super heaven rank martial art that Tian obtained in the Heaven Realm's Forbidden Land, Dark Night Stupa Mountain. The 9 Extremes War God Art had a total of 9 levels. But in his previous life, although Tian already had 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength, he only cultivated the 9 Extremes War God Art to the 5th level, Earth Extreme Mystic Heavenly Realm. Currently, Tian could merely cultivate the 9 Extremes War God Art to the 1st level, Metal Extreme, Yellow Heavenly Realm. To want to cultivate to the 2nd level, with Extreme, Jade Heavenly Realm, he had to at least reach the Manifestation Realm. Circulating the 9 Extremes War God Art, essence energy gushed out from his essence meridians, cleansing his dantian and circulating throughout his entire body. Tian's body directly turned into a vortex, starting to slowly absorb the spirit energy between heaven and earth. Heaven and earth spirit energy flowed into his dantian, cleansing his essence meridians and purifying his physique. After the 9 Extremes War God Art circulated 9 times, Tian felt that the essence energy within his dantian's essence meridians had increased considerably, broke through to the 4th level Origin Spirit Realm. The corners of Tian's mouth curled into a hint of a smile. During this period of time, even though he had been constantly on the road, Tian had not wasted any time and had been cultivating all along. Coupled with the fact that he had just consumed the blood essence pill, breaking through now was only a matter of time. After breaking through in his strength, Tian was still not satisfied. His divine sense entered the star domain within the 10th essence meridian. Within the star domain, the domain origin formation stood majestically, like a cornerstone that guarded over the heavens and earth. It emitted traces of an ancient and profound aura, existing between the heavens and the earth since time immemorial. The primordial star stone that connected the heavens and the earth stood in the center of the domain origin formation, like a heavenly pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. At this moment, above the primordial star stone, there were 12 stars shining brightly, shining with an everlasting and inextinguishable radiance. These were the 12 stars that Nyetian had awakened. It was precisely because of the existence of these 12 stars that Nyetian's strength was so terrifying. My strength has risen by a level, so the power of the stars should also awaken once more. Nyetian sat down in a lotus position, starting to sense the stars above the 9 heavenly rivers. After a moment, the 4 stars above the first heavenly river sensed it at the same time, suddenly turning bright. 4 rays of light shone on the primordial star stone. The power of the 4 stars awakened at the same time. Very good. Adding the power of the 12 stars previously, I've already awakened the power of 16 stars. My current strength definitely exceeds 40,000 gene. The corners of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a confident arc 40,000 gene of strength. Even 9th level origin spirit martial artists who possessed strength-type essence spirits might not be able to achieve it. Nyetian was just a mere 4th level origin spirit and could possess the strength of 40,000 gene. It was seriously terrifying. Furthermore, this was just Nyetian's pure strength. If he used martial techniques, it would definitely exceed 50,000 gene. And what's this? Just as Nyetian was preparing to leave the star domain, he suddenly discovered a strange phenomenon. Nyetian saw that the power of the 16 stars on the primordial star stone actually formed an arc, like it was a part of some very large painting. Nyetian immediately realized that these power of the stars did not awaken randomly, but awakened through some sort of sequence. With this, Nyetian's shock was not small. He immediately sensed the densely packed power of the stars on the primordial star stone. The next instant, Nyetian was directly dumbfounded on the spot, his entire person petrified. These power of the stars seem to be able to form some sort of pattern. Inside contains a powerful spirit array power, very much like some sort of totem. After a very, very long time, Nyetian voiced out the guess in his heart. Although awakening the power of the 16 stars was merely a line, Nyetian could sense that this line was just the tip of the iceberg of the star totem. If he awakened enough power of the stars, he would absolutely be able to stimulate the power of the star totem. Nyetian had a feeling that the power of star totems was absolutely enough to destroy the heavens and destroy the earth. Chapter 64. The next morning, everything was silent, and the eastern horizon shone with a glimmer of light, carefully soaking the light blue sky. A new day was gradually moving in from afar. Nyetian got up very early, but he slept very well. Inside the chaotic original coffin, he had 10 times more time than others. Opening the door, a gust of fresh air greeted him. Accompanied by rays of golden light, the sun slowly peeked out. Nyetian took a deep breath and immediately felt refreshed. Nyetian quietly enjoyed the morning scenery for an hour and felt much calmer. When a martial artist cultivated, not only did they need to cultivate their body, but they also needed to cultivate their heart. Only with a firm heart of martial arts could a martial artist walk further down the road. After a while, the servants of the Jean residence delivered breakfast. Nyetian was dumbfounded. Jean de Bayo actually ordered the exact same dish as the one from the first-grade restaurant yesterday. At this moment, there were more than 10 servants who came to deliver the food alone. Nyeyuro had just climbed out of bed and was overjoyed to see the sumptuous meal. Xiaoguai also enjoyed a meal of mysterious jade steel bamboo. It was much tastier than iron or bamboo. Brother Nyetian wrote, "Air is full." Nyeyuro finished her meal and hugged Xiaoguai with a satisfied expression. Nyetian shook his head and smiled. With such a large table of food, it would be strange if the two of them were not full. After eating, Nyetian prepared to go to the Alchemist Guild to get an alchemist badge. Before he even stepped out of the door, Jean de Bayo's figure appeared. "Fatty, Thank you for your food. Don't be so wasteful next time. Euro was just joking yesterday. Nietion smiled faintly. He had never been an extravagant person. Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "This is the only time. If little sister Euro eats like this every day, the first grade house will lose a lot of money." Nie Euro pouted and said, "Brother Nietion, does that mean Ro Air can't eat like this in the future? Of course, you can't eat like this. Otherwise, if you get fat, you won't be able to marry when you grow up." Nietion nodded and smiled. "All right, Roer, eat less in the future. If I get too fat, I won't be able to be big brother Nietion's wife," Nie Euro said seriously. Nietion was speechless and could only shake his head with a smile. "Boss, Uncle Chioshan brought Ling to find Principal Chi. What are you planning to do today? Do you want to go to Tyrant Cloud Academy to take a look?" Jean de Bayo also believed that Nietion had come to participate in the recruitment of Tyrant Cloud Academy. So he asked. Nietion said, "I want to go to the Alchemist Guild to do something and buy some medicinal herbs." "All right." Jean de Bayo knew that Nietion was an alchemist, so he immediately agreed and chuckled. "I'm a VIP member of the Alchemist Guild. Boss can buy whatever herbs you want." Nietion did not stand on ceremony and nodded slightly. This time, he mainly wanted to buy some medicinal herbs that could clear the blood vessels to treat Chioshan, and also some medicinal herbs that could promote cultivation. Nietion did not want to buy Spirit Dawn directly. He liked to use the Spirit Dawn that he refined himself. The Alchemist Guild was a colossal organization. It had a long history and had existed since the Middle Ages. The Alchemist Guild gathered almost all the alchemists and was a powerful organization formed by alchemists. The headquarters of the Alchemist Guild was in the Heaven Realm. In his previous life, Nietion was one of the 7 great elders of the Heaven Realm Alchemist Guild. The initial purpose of the Alchemist Guild was to protect the alchemists because the alchemists were all weirdos with strong mental power but low combat power. Today, the Alchemist Guild had become one of the strongest forces in the Heaven Realm. Even the Heavenly Emperor Chenin, who caused the death of Nietion, did not dare to offend the Heaven Realm Alchemist Guild. Alchemist Guild. Looking at the strange building in front of him, Nietion smiled faintly. This was the Alchemist Guild. It was a spherical building with a lustrous luster. It looked exceptionally dazzling and crystal clear, like a huge spirit dam. In any place, the Alchemist Guild was the most luxurious place. This was determined by the respected status of the alchemists. The Alchemist Guild in the Blue Cloud Empire was only a 3rd-grade Alchemist Guild. It belonged to the lowest grade Alchemist Guild. "Welcome, distinguished guests." Just as Nietion and the rest stepped in, a sweet-sounding voice sounded. Dressed in revealing clothes, the sexy waitress, Xia Lu, appeared. Seeing Jean de Bayo, Xia Lu's face lit up and she asked sweetly, "Young Master Jean, how can I help you?" Jean de Bayo was a diamond VIP of the Alchemist Guild. He often visited the Alchemist Guild and was always generous. Most of the waiters knew him. Jean de Bayo's small eyes stared at Xia Lu's exaggeratedly full chest, and he could not help but swallow his saliva. Nietion could not help but shake his head speechlessly. The Xia Lu in front of him had fair skin, a beautiful appearance, a hot body, 2 dimples on her cheeks, and a pure and pleasant smile. She was indeed a great beauty, but compared to Mo Rushi and Xiuling she was still lacking. Cough, cough. Jean de Bayo realized that he had lost his composure. He quickly coughed twice and said, Want to buy some herbs." Xia Lu smiled sweetly and said, "What herbs do you need, young Master Jean?" Her eyes were always on Jean de Bayo. From the beginning to the end, she did not look at Nietion. In her eyes, Nietion should be Jean de Bayo's follower. "Boss, what herbs do we need?" Jean de Bayo looked at Nietion. "Boss." Xia Lu was slightly stunned. She did not expect the young man in front of her to be Jean de Bayo's boss. It seemed that Jean de Bayo was the follower. She smiled charmingly, and her attitude immediately changed. "Sir, what do you need?" she asked. Nietion did not say much. He directly took out a list and said indifferently, "I want 10 sets of the herbs on this list. All the herbs must be fresh and picked within 3 days. Bring them over later. I want to personally inspect them." "Mister, Are you sure you want so many herbs? Xiaolu took the list and looked at it. She was shocked. There were at least hundreds of herbs on the list, and Nie Tian wanted 10 sets. Nie Tian nodded lightly. Hurry up and get the herbs. Are you afraid that this young master can't afford it? Jean de Bao said impatiently. All right. Xiaolu quickly said respectfully, please wait a moment. Listening to Nie Tian's tone, he was obviously an alchemist. No wonder Jean de Bao was so respectful in front of him. Big brother Nie Tian, what are these? Why doesn't Rowan know them? Xiaolu just left, and Nie Euro immediately activated the 100,000 wise mode. Nie Tian shook his head helplessly as he carefully explained. The herbs placed in the Alchemist Guild Hall were the most basic herbs. Nie Tian could know the details of all the herbs just by using his nose. Jean de Bao was dumbfounded. He did not expect Nie Tian to have such a deep understanding of herbs. Big brother Nie Tian, this thing looks so strange. Nie Euro carried Xiao Guai and walked to a strange whisker-like herb and asked curiously. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed in surprise. It's actually purple dragon whisker. Purple dragon whisker was a 7th-tier herb. Not to mention Blue Cloud Empire. Even in the Heaven Realm, it was not common. Fatty, I want this herb. Nie Tian did not have time to explain to Nie Euro and directly said to Jean de Bao, I'm sorry, this is a display of herbs for viewing only. It is not for sale. Before Jean de Bao could answer, a cold voice suddenly sounded behind him. Chapter 65. The young man had an arrogant look on his face. He was wearing the typical robe of an alchemist, and there was a shiny badge on his chest. There were 3 golden imprints engraved on it, which was particularly dazzling. Master Jean. The young man's appearance immediately caused a commotion. Countless eyes in the crowd focused on the young man. Everyone who looked at him bowed and saluted him. Their faces were filled with awe and worship. If you looked closely, you would find that people's eyes were not focused on his face, but on the shiny badge on his chest. This badge was the symbol of an alchemist, the alchemist badge. The 3 golden marks represented that the young man was a rank 3 alchemist. A rank 3 alchemist, such an identity, even a giant spirit realm expert would have to bow his head in worship. No wonder the crowd's reaction was so sensational. Rank 3 alchemist. Nie Tian was also slightly stunned. He was a little surprised that the rank 3 alchemist in front of him was so young, only about 20 years old. Boss, he is Blue Cloud Empire's #1 alchemist genius, Master Zhang Yifeng. Jean de Bao reacted and whispered to Nie Tian. So he was Blue Cloud Empire's #1 alchemist genius. No wonder he was only 20 years old and was already a rank 3 alchemist. A 20 years old rank 3 alchemist, his talent in alchemy was very amazing, especially in a small place like Blue Cloud Empire. Zhang Yifeng was very arrogant, looking at Nie Tian with contempt. He had been observing Nie Tian for a while and was very shocked by Nie Tian's understanding of herbs. Some of the deeper knowledge of herbs, even he didn't know. Zhang Yifeng guessed that Nie Tian must have come to the Alchemist Guild to collect his alchemist badge. When he saw that Nie Tian was only 15 or 16 years old, he suddenly felt a sense of crisis. Zhang Yifeng looked at Nie Tian with a very strange expression and said cold, Your Excellency can be considered to have some understanding of herbs. What you know can be said, but what you don't know cannot be said. The herb in front of you is obviously a snaketail root, but you said it was some purple dragon beard. This master has studied herbs for many years and has never heard of the name purple dragon beard. You must be making it up to scare people. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Yifeng flicked his sleeves and reprimanded. This master hates people like you who pretend to be knowledgeable the most. The Alchemist Guild does not welcome people like you. Please leave now. Zhang Yifeng had chosen to appear at this time because Nie Tian had misspoken. He had called the common snake-tail root a purple dragon beard. So this person is pretending to know what he doesn't know. I saw him talking to the little girl clearly and logically just now, so I thought he was another young alchemist. Sigh, morals are really degenerating these days. Instead of learning good things at such a young age, you're trying to show off your knowledge. Now, there's a problem with the sales. You're still too young. If you know, then you know. If you don't know, then you don't know. What's the point of pretending to know and spouting nonsense? The crowd burst into laughter. They were all waiting to watch a good show. Boss. Jean de Bayo broke out in a cold sweat. Zhang Yifeng was not someone he could offend. Even Jean de Bayo's father, Jean Mingxin, had to be respectful when he saw Zhang Yifeng. It's okay. Nye Tian smiled faintly, motioning Jean de Bayo to calm down. Snaketail root, is it? Nye Tian smiled slightly and said, I admit, you're right to call it snaketail root, because it is indeed a snaketail root. However, this snaketail root is different from ordinary snaketail roots. What's different? Zhang Yifeng saw Nye Tian's calm and composed face and thought of the latter's previous understanding of medicinal herbs. He couldn't help but be surprised. Nye Tian glanced at Zhang Yifeng, frowned, and continued, ordinary snaketail roots mature in 100 years, after which they stop growing. But the snaketail root itself is a very strong organism. If it encounters a suitable environment, such as the extreme cold of the polar regions or the high temperature of a volcano, its heaven-defying vitality can be completely stimulated. In this kind of environment, the snaketail root does not have a mature period and can grow without limit. Nonsense. Not waiting for Nye Tian to finish, Zhang Yifeng coldly interrupted. An unlimited growth of medicinal herbs. This was the first time Zhang Yifeng heard of it, and it was completely against common sense. Nye Tian smiled faintly and continued. Once the serpent-tail root grows without limit, it will grow thin and long purple whiskers. Therefore, this kind of serpent-tail root is called purple dragon whiskers. If you don't believe me, you can take out the purple dragon whiskers and see if there are purple whiskers under the snake tail. Okay. Zhang Yifeng hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed and coldly said, This master will expose your lies in front of everyone today, so that everyone can see the true face of swindler. Zhang Yifeng said, and was about to take out the purple dragon whiskers, but was stopped by Nye Tian. Nye Tian said with a smile, Let me make it clear first. If what I said is correct, you must sell me the purple dragon whiskers and also sell it to me at the price of snaketail root. Purple dragon whiskers was a 7th-grade medicinal herb, while snaketail root was only a 2nd-grade medicinal herb. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Zhang Yifeng was stunned for a moment, and then immediately said, What if you're wrong? What do you want? Nye Tian asked back. Zhang Yifeng thought for a moment, then said brazenly, If you're wrong, I want you to leave your eyes behind. Nye Tian frowned and took a cold look at Zhang Yifeng. If Zhang Yifeng was just being competitive just now, then right now he was being vicious. Taking a step back, even if Nye Tian was wrong, he shouldn't have to pay with his eyes. Zhang Yifeng just couldn't bear to see others being more outstanding than him, and he couldn't tolerate the appearance of someone more talented than him. Boss, forget it. Let's just leave. Isn't it just a broken medicinal herb? Jean de Bayo's forehead was filled with sweat as he pulled Nye Tian and said. Nye Tian, however, faintly smiled and said, I agree. Take out the purple dragon whiskers. Boss, this. Jean de Bayo swallowed his saliva, and a chill went down his back. He really couldn't understand where Nye Tian got his confidence from. One must know that Zhang Yifeng was a 3rd-rank pill master. Humph! Zhang Yifeng snorted and looked at Nye Tian a little complacently, as if he was saying, I'm definitely going to take your eyes. Without eyes, no matter how monstrous their talent in alchemy was, they wouldn't be that outstanding. Zhang Yifeng took out the purple dragon whiskers from the cabinet, then carefully pulled out the long snake tail. Right at the moment when the purple dragon whiskers was completely lifted up, Zhang Yifeng's entire body stiffened. Everyone extended their heads to take a look. Under the purple dragon whiskers' long snake tail, countless thin and dense purple tail whiskers appeared. It was exactly the same as what Nye Tian said. My God, this young man actually got it right. The snake tail really has purple tail whiskers. That's right. Can the snake tail really grow to this extent? I've really broadened my horizons today. What snake tail? This is the purple dragon whiskers. Everyone went into an uproar, and all of them looked at Niet Tian with an inconceivable gaze. This is impossible. After being petrified for a few seconds, Zhang Yifeng suddenly roared, and his throat became hoarse. There's nothing impossible. Niet Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng and said faintly, "The path of alchemy is broad and profound, as long as one's heart is limitless. One can become a legend of alchemy. Your talent in alchemy is not bad, but it's a pity that you're too eager for quick success and you're narrow-minded. If there's no expert to guide you, your achievements in this life are destined to be limited." Chapter 66. After Niet Tian said that, Zhang Yifeng stood rooted to the ground, looking at Niet Tian in disbelief. When Niet Tian spoke earlier, it was totally the attitude of a senior with a teaching tone, which made Zhang Yifeng unable to accept it. Since young, Zhang Yifeng had countless halos above his head. Even when the Alchemist Association's president spoke to him, it was also an equal attitude. More importantly, Zhang Yifeng became a third-rank alchemist completely by himself without a real teacher to teach him. Relying on his own talent and perseverance to reach this step, Zhang Yifeng's alchemy Dao talent was indeed dazzling. "Are you teaching me?" After some time, Zhang Yifeng reacted, and his face was so gloomy that it could almost drip water. In Zhang Yifeng's view, Niet Tian must be some big family's descendant and relied on countless resources to have such amazing alchemy Dao knowledge. He looked down on this kind of family's young masters the most. Without the support of the family behind them, these people were nothing. Niet Tian smiled faintly and said, "Just speaking the truth. If you feel that I'm teaching you, then I'm teaching you." Niet Tian was really just speaking the truth, and those who could receive his personal teachings were really not many. Everyone looked at Niet Tian's calm and relaxed expression and were collectively stunned. It was hard to imagine that a teenager was actually teaching Blue Cloud Empire's #1 genius alchemist a lesson. Impudent. Zhang Yifeng breathed out a mouthful of turbid air like a volcanic eruption and immediately roared angrily as he reprimanded, "Stinking brat. Who do you think you are? A fourth-rank alchemist? A mere family's young master who merely came into contact with some medicinal herbs, that's all, and you actually dare to teach this master a lesson. If I say that you're insulting me, then you're going to die right now. Do you believe it?" Insulting alchemists was practically a taboo for martial artists, because behind every alchemist, there were countless martial artists who were willing to risk their lives for them. Moreover, alchemists also had the Alchemist Association's backing, and their identity was more terrifying than anyone else. The first thing Niet Tian did when he arrived at the Imperial City was to obtain an alchemist badge. This action was to borrow the Alchemist Guild's power to protect himself. With the alchemist badge, one would be a legitimate alchemist and would be able to obtain a set of alchemist robe specially refined by the Alchemist Guild. As long as you wore an alchemist's robe, it represented your identity. As long as it wasn't a personal grudge or you were the one who took the initiative to stir up trouble, if anyone dared to harm you, the Alchemist Guild would step out to help you settle it, no matter how powerful your enemy is. Of course, as a noble alchemist, he was highly respected by martial artists. Generally speaking, no martial artist would take the initiative to offend a pill master. It was precisely because of the special identity of an alchemist that Zhang Yifeng's status was so high. Even the members of the royal family in the Imperial City had to lower their heads when they saw him. Now, there was actually a brat who didn't know what was good for him that lectured him. How could he endure this? "Master Zhang, you've misunderstood. My boss was just speaking casually. He definitely didn't have any intention of insulting you." Jean de Bao's forehead was filled with beads of sweat. Insulting an alchemist, this sin was too big. Niet Tian raised his head slightly, took a look at Zhang Yifeng, and said, "If you feel that I insulted you, then so be it. I just feel that your attitude of looking at the sky from the bottom of a well is a pity for such a talented alchemist." "You." A cold, killing intent flashed past Zhang Yifeng's face. He suddenly took a step forward and said word by word, "Say it again." Just as Zhang Yifeng was about to make a move, a dozen or so powerful auras suddenly appeared in the corners of the guild hall. They were all manifestation realm martial artists. Yet Tian had long sensed the existence of these people. They were all the guards of the Alchemist Guild. Normally, they wouldn't appear, but once someone caused trouble, they would immediately take action without any mercy. However, Niet Tian wasn't moved in the slightest and said indifferently, "It's the same even if I say it again. You are arrogant and short-sighted. You can only see the sky as big as the mouth of the well. So you think that the sky is only as big as the mouth of the well. If you can't change your attitude, your achievements in this life are destined to be limited." Niet Tian's voice wasn't loud, but a few light words caused the entire hall to sink into a deathly silence. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard in the surroundings. Zhang Yifeng was Blue Cloud Empire's #1 alchemist genius. He was only 20 years old and was already a third-rank alchemist. Everyone thought that his future was limitless. However, Niet Tian actually lectured him in front of everyone and directly said that his achievements were destined to be limited. This was practically a slap to Zhang Yifeng's face, and it was a naked slap to his face. This was intolerable. Zhang Yifeng's entire body trembled violently. His mouth was only inhaling and not exhaling. His entire person was like a suddenly boiling volcano, about to erupt in an instant. "Stinking brat, you are courting death." Suddenly, a furious voice rolled out from Zhang Yifeng's throat. He pointed at Niet Tian and roared madly, "Kill him." As soon as he roared, more than 10 black-clothed cultivators suddenly appeared in the surroundings. "Get out of the way." The leading black-clothed cultivator had the strongest aura. He had actually reached the 9th level of the all-creation realm. The black-clothed cultivator roared, and the surrounding crowd immediately scattered like the tide. In the blink of an eye, only Niet Tian and the others were left in the center of the hall. Jean de Bayo was scared silly, gulping down his saliva. Nie Yuro's little face was also deathly pale. Xiao Guai, who was in her arms, also opened its drowsy eyes. Niet Tian swept his gaze over the black-clothed cultivators in front of him, then looked at Zhang Yifeng and said abruptly, "Using the profound grass to suppress the demonic fire doesn't feel good, does it? Your pupils have shrunk and your forehead has turned red. This means that the demonic fire has already invaded your Yuan spirit Yuan meridian. In less than 10 days, the demonic fire will burn your Yuan spirit and Yuan meridian. At that time, it will be difficult for you to even survive, much less continue being an alchemist." These few baffling words made Zhang Yifeng's entire person completely sluggish. Bean-sized beads of sweat flowed down from his forehead. The terror in his heart could not be concealed and showed on his face. Seeing Zhang Yifeng's expression suddenly change, the dozen or so black-clothed cultivators were also stunned, not daring to act rashly. "Who are you?" Zhang Yifeng asked solemnly, his face revealing an extremely pained expression. The demonic fire. This was Zhang Yifeng's greatest secret. He had never mentioned it to anyone before. How could Niet Tian possibly know? The reason why Zhang Yifeng's alchemy Dao talent was so outstanding was that when he was very young, he fused with a type of demonic fire by chance, the Doomsday Flame. It was precisely with the Doomsday Flame that Zhang Yifeng could become a Tier 3 alchemist at a young age. If he could obtain the guidance of an alchemy master, he would have long been a Tier 4 alchemy master, or even a Tier 5 alchemy master. However, a month ago, the Doomsday Flame in Zhang Yifeng's body suddenly went out of control and became incomparably tyrannical. It even wanted to burn his Yuan meridian. Helpless, Zhang Yifeng flipped through a large number of ancient books and finally saw in a book that the profound grass could suppress the demonic nature of the Doomsday Flame. After using the profound grass, the Doomsday Flame was slightly alleviated, but the good times did not last long. In recent days, the profound grass could no longer suppress the Doomsday Flame. Instead, it made the latter have an even more violent backlash. Zhang Yifeng knew that if he still did not suppress the Doomsday Flame, his cultivation would definitely be wasted. Chapter 67. Niet Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng and smiled faintly. "Who I am is not important. What's important is that I know how to suppress the demon fire. Really? Zhang Yifeng's body shook as if he was struck by lightning. His eyes were filled with desire. For the past month, he had been tortured by the demon fire in his body every day. Even though he had the mysterious grass to suppress the demon fire, the mysterious grass was still an extremely poisonous plant. Its toxicity was very strong, and its side effects were even worse. Just yesterday, Zhang Yifeng suddenly felt numb all over his body, and his hands were gradually losing feeling. His dantian felt like it was being burned by a raging fire, and it was extremely painful. Nie Tian's expression was indifferent as he said, "You started using the mysterious grass 20 days ago. The mysterious grass is extremely poisonous, and indeed has a suppressive effect on the demon fire. However, the demon fire is violent by nature, and the more you try to suppress it, the more violent it becomes. In the beginning, you only used 1 mysterious grass a day, but now, even if you use 10 mysterious grasses, you still won't be able to suppress the demon fire. 10 mysterious grasses are enough to poison a 4th-rank spirit beast to death. So, I guess your body is numb now, especially your hands. They're almost losing feeling." Zhang Yifeng looked at Nie Tian in shock. The shock and astonishment in his heart were written all over his face. He didn't know how Nie Tian knew this, because he had never mentioned this to anyone. Nie Tian paused for a moment and smiled faintly. "How about it? Do you want me to continue?" At this time, everyone in the hall was dumbfounded. They stared at Nie Tian and Zhang Yifeng with their mouths agape. Although these people didn't know what the demon fire and mysterious grass in Nie Tian's words were, they could tell that Nie Tian knew something that was crucial to Zhang Yifeng's life. "Please tell me how to suppress the demon fire, I beg you." Suddenly, Zhang Yifeng took a step forward, grabbed Nie Tian's shoulder, and cried almost crazily. Seeing Zhang Yifeng's state, everyone stared at Nie Tian in astonishment, trying to guess the identity of the young man in front of them. How could he make the #1 genius alchemist in Blue Cloud Empire lose his composure like this? Nie Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng, who had lost his composure, and said with a playful smile, "Just now, I only said a few words of truth, and some people couldn't take it anymore. They even said they wanted to kill me. Are you begging me now?" Zhang Yifeng was stunned. Looking at the calm youth in front of him, he suddenly made up his mind. Plop! Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Zhang Yifeng directly knelt in front of Nie Tian and spoke in a clear voice. "You're right, mister. I don't know what's good for me. If mister can suppress the demonic fire in my body, I am willing to worship mister as my master and serve mister for the rest of my life." The feeling of being burned by the raging fire was too painful. Zhang Yifeng did not want to endure it for even a moment longer. Moreover, he had indeed thought it through before deciding to acknowledge Zhang Xian as his master. In fact, Zhang Yifeng had long discovered that Nie Tian's alchemy Dao attainments were far above his. Just the understanding of some medicinal herbs was far beyond the average person's. Zhang Yifeng guessed that either Nie Tian had an incomparably powerful master behind him, or he had an incomparably powerful family. Therefore, as long as he acknowledged Nie Tian as his master, he would actually have a huge advantage. In the world of martial arts, the strong were revered. The alchemy Dao was the same. Those who knew were the best. Nie Tian's alchemy Dao attainments were far above Zhang Yifeng's. It was not strange that the latter wanted to acknowledge him as his master. Zhang Yifeng's kneeling was out of the ordinary. The entire guild hall was filled with gasps. Everyone had a dumbfounded look on their faces. What's going on was written on their faces. The dignified Blue Cloud Empire's #1 alchemist genius actually knelt down. Moreover, he was kneeling to a teenager. What's more, he was kneeling to acknowledge him as his master. Jean de Bayo and Zhang Yifeng were both at a loss. They looked at Nie Tian in surprise. In their hearts, they were incomparably proud. Fortunately, they had acknowledged Nie Tian as their boss early on. Jean de Bayo was even thinking at this time that if Zhang Yifeng really became Nie Tian's disciple, then wouldn't he be a generation older than the other party? Just thinking about it made him feel comfortable. Nie Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a strange arc. Zhang Yifeng did have some talent, and he also possessed the devil fire. With a little training, it was very likely that he would have some achievements in the alchemy Dao. But these were far from enough. Nie Tian's standards for accepting disciples were very high. Not accepting without talent, not accepting without perseverance, not accepting without a strong temperament, not accepting with poor character, not accepting even more. After thinking for a while, Nie Tian said faintly, "You're not qualified to acknowledge me as your master, at least not now. If you're willing, I can temporarily accept you as a registered disciple. As for whether you can become an official disciple in the future, that will depend on your performance." As soon as Nie Tian's words came out, everyone was once again shocked to the extreme. Blue Cloud Empire's #1 alchemy master genius knelt down in front of him to acknowledge him as his master, but Nie Tian actually did not agree and could only be a registered disciple. This was simply seeing a ghost in the flesh. Did the sun rise from the northwest today? A registered disciple, although a disciple in name, was no different from a servant. The master did not have any obligation to teach the registered disciple, but the registered disciple must serve the master with the etiquette of a master. Simply put, Zhang Yifeng must acknowledge Nie Tian as his master, and Nie Tian had no responsibility towards Zhang Yifeng. He could waste him at any time. In fact, what everyone did not know was that even this registered disciple, Nie Tian, was willing to accept him only because he was kind enough to lower the standards. Even if he became Nie Tian's registered disciple, it was enough to change Zhang Yifeng's life. Nie Tian just did not want to waste a talented alchemy master. Zhang Yifeng was stunned for a moment, and then reacted. Glancing at Nie Tian's expressionless face, he immediately opened his mouth and said, "Student thanks master." Zhang Yifeng was about to kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of Nie Tian to acknowledge him as his master, but was stopped by Nie Tian's hand. "Get up. There's no need for the apprenticeship ceremony. Wait until you become an official disciple, then we'll talk about it." Nie Tian said lightly. "Yes, student obeys." Zhang Yifeng stood up and said respectfully, "All right, the good show is over. Disperse now." Nie Tian swept his eyes over the crowd and said while waving his hand. Everyone felt their faces stiffen, as if they had seen a strange and bizarre drama. It was simply unbelievable. After a while, the crowd gradually dispersed. At this time, the Alchemist Guild's waitress, Xiao Lu, walked over while trembling. Everything that happened just now, she had seen it all. Now she finally knew why Jean de Bayo would be Nie Tian's little brother. "Mister, these are the herbs you wanted." Xiao Lu handed over a very exaggerated big bag of herbs. Her eyes were filled with awe. Nie Tian carefully checked the herbs and nodded his head in satisfaction, indicating Jean de Bayo could pay. Zhang Yifeng hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Teacher, from now on, all the herbs that you buy from the Alchemist Guild, just put it all on this student's bill." Saying that, Zhang Yifeng respectfully handed the purple dragon whisker to Nie Tian. Nie Tian took the purple dragon whisker, smiled faintly, and said, "Zhang Yifeng, your talent is not low, and your luck is also not bad. The devil fire to you is both an opportunity and a challenge. If you can't make good use of the devil fire in your body, your ending may be worse than you think." Chapter 68. Zhang Yifeng had been tortured by the doomsday flames for a month, and he no longer wanted to endure the pain of being burned by the flames. Nie Tian smiled lightly and took a step forward. He placed a hand on Zhang Yifeng's back and channeled a wave of origin energy into him. "It's the doomsday flame." Nie Tian's expression changed slightly when he sensed the demonic nature of the demonic fire in Zhang Yifeng's body. Nie Tian hadn't expected the demonic fire in Zhang Yifeng's body to be so powerful. The doomsday flame was ranked 13th on the demonic fire list. It was refined from the lava core of the doomsday volcano. After absorbing 10,000 years of baleful earth chi, it possessed an extremely strong demonic nature. It was rumored that it had the power to burn the heavens and the earth. However, The doomsday flame in Zhang Yifeng's body was clearly not the main body of the demonic flame. Instead, it was just a part of the doomsday flame. Although it was only a portion of it, its might was unimaginable. For Zhang Yifeng to be able to endure the burning pain of the doomsday flame, his mental fortitude was also rare. Teacher, is the doomsday flame very difficult to suppress? Zhang Yifeng was very nervous. After all, this concerned his life. Nie Tian sighed softly and said with a smile, although the doomsday flame is terrifying, it is not a problem for Master. Use the 7 leaves meridian cleansing grass, heaven essence lotus, and purple ginseng. Use the ratio of 3:4 to concoct medicine. Take it 3 times a day, and it will be able to suppress the demonic nature of the doomsday flame. Thank you, teacher. Zhang Yifeng was so moved that he almost cried. He quickly bowed to express his gratitude. Nie Tian said, don't be in such a hurry to thank me. The doomsday flame's earth-fiendish qi was very heavy, and it was almost impossible to suppress it. If you want to completely deal with the doomsday flames, you must fuse it with your own origin spirit and use it. Then what should we do? Zhang Yifeng knew how terrifying the doomsday flame was. Previously, when he was refining pills, he only used the doomsday flame slightly, and every time, he would receive unexpected miraculous effects. If the doomsday flame could fuse with his origin spirit and be used by him, his alchemy Dao cultivation would definitely have a qualitative leap. Nie Tian glanced at Zhang Yifeng and said indifferently, how could it be easy to fuse with the demonic fire? Although the doomsday flame in your body is only a very small part, you'll need at least 5th or even 6th grade medicinal herbs or elixirs to supplement it. After a pause, Nie Tian continued, use the method I told you to suppress the demonic fire first. As for the matter of fusing with the demonic fire in the future, if your performance is good enough, I will definitely help you. Thank you, teacher, Zhang Yifeng said respectfully. Nie Tian nodded and prepared to leave. Nie Tian originally wanted to receive an alchemist badge. Although he would not receive a Tier 4 alchemist badge, a Tier 2 alchemist badge was enough. However, from the looks of it now, there was no need for that. Zhang Yifeng was enough. All right. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of a matter and said, recently, did a person surnamed Gu appear in the Alchemist Guild? The alchemist surnamed Gu, Nie Tian was referring to Gu San So, who he had previously fought with. Since Qin Yulong appeared in Blue Cloud City, then Gu San So must have come as well. Previously, Gu San So had used Nie Yuro to threaten Nie Tian. Nie Tian would not forget that. Moreover, Gu San So was a Tier 4 alchemist, which was a big threat to Nie Tian. Teacher, are you talking about Grandmaster Gu? Zhang Yifeng asked in surprise. Do you know this person? Nie Tian asked. A little, Zhang Yifeng said. Grandmaster Gu is not from Blue Cloud Empire. I think the Qin clan invited him from Wen Qin Empire to treat the princess. Grandmaster Gu appeared at the Alchemist Guild once before. I think he should be in the palace now. So he is from Wen Qin Empire. Nie Tian smiled. I understand. Wen Qin Empire was an upper-tier empire of Blue Cloud Empire, a second-tier empire of the 3,000 Small Worlds. Blue Cloud Empire was only a vassal state of Wen Qin Empire. Teacher, do you know Grandmaster Gu? Zhang Yifeng asked curiously. Nie Tian said, I have a personal grudge with him. Help me keep an eye on him. Yes. Zhang Yifeng bowed. Nie Tian nodded and said, help me find someone to make 12 silver needles for acupuncture. Okay. Zhang Yifeng did not dare to refuse. After settling all these, Nie Tian did not delay and left immediately. Zhang Yifeng wanted to stay by Nie Tian's side, but was rejected by Nie Tian. Anyway, Zhang Yifeng was at the Alchemist Guild. If Nie Tian needed him, he could find someone to call him. After leaving the Alchemist Guild, Nie Tian immediately returned to the Jin Mansion. At this moment, Jean de Bayo was full of admiration for Nie Tian. With just a few words, he managed to subdue the #1 genius alchemist in Blue Cloud Empire. Not only that, He even accepted him as a disciple. Everything that happened in the Alchemist Guild today was completely out of Jean de Bayo's expectations. Who would have thought that with Zhang Yifeng's identity, he would actually become Nie Tian's disciple? This was simply shocking. Nie Tian felt that it was nothing. For Zhang Yifeng to be able to become his disciple, it could be said that he had run into dogshit luck. After returning to the Jean mansion, Nie Tian went into his room and instructed Jean de Bayo not to let anyone disturb him. Even Nie Yuro was not allowed to disturb him. For the next few days, Nie Tian planned to concentrate on concocting pills. He had a pill cauldron that he got from Mo Tai last time. For 3 whole days, Nie Tian stayed in his room alone. He did not eat, drink, sleep, or rest. 3 days later, when he came out of his room again, Nie Tian had a lot more pills and a few bottles of medicine on him. 10 Meridian Awakening pills, 10 Blood Essence pills, 10 Marrow Cleansing pills, 10. Using 3 days, Nie Tian concocted over 100 pills and quite a lot of medicine. If anyone knew about this, they would definitely think of Nie Tian as a monster. In 3 days, he concocted over 100 pills. Even a rank 5 alchemist would find it hard to concoct a level 1 pill. When Nie Tian walked out of his room, he saw Qiu Shan and the others walking over. Nie Yuro was also with them. During the few days that Nie Tian was concocting pills, Nie Yuro had been with Qiu Ling. Jean de Bayo brought the 2 girls to stroll around Blue Cloud City. Big brother Nie Tian, you finally came out. Nie Yuro ran over while carrying Xiao Guai and held on to Nie Tian's hand coquettishly. Nie Tian smiled faintly and pinched Nie Yuro's delicate little face. Mr. Nie Tian. Qiu Shan already knew that Nie Tian took Zhang Yifeng as an in-name disciple. Although it was unbelievable, it really happened. Therefore, his attitude towards Nie Tian was even more respectful. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Then, he took out a bottle of medicine and handed it to Qiu Shan, saying, "This is 9 Revolutions Spirit Elixir. Take 3 drops a day. 10 days later, your damaged meridians will show signs of recovery. At that time, I'll use acupuncture to awaken your meridians with silver needles." The reason why Nie Tian asked Zhang Yifeng to prepare 12 silver needles was to treat Qiu Shan. "Thank you, Mr. Nie." Qiu Shan's hands were trembling as he received the medicine. Right now, he had an indescribable trust towards Nie Tian. He felt that anything could happen to Nie Tian. Nie Tian smiled faintly. When he saw that Qiu Shan and the others were about to leave, he asked, "Where are you guys going?" Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "Boss, today is the start of Tyrant Cloud Academy's recruitment. Boss, do you want to join the fun?" After witnessing Nie Tian's strength, Jean de Bayo did not think that Nie Tian would be interested in joining Tyrant Cloud Academy's recruitment. Chapter 69. Half an hour later, Nie Tian and the others appeared in Tyrant Cloud Academy. Tyrant Cloud Academy was the #1 martial arts academy in Blue Cloud Empire. It was also the strongest and oldest martial arts academy in Blue Cloud Empire. In Blue Cloud Empire, Tyrant Cloud was the holy land of martial arts in the hearts of all the youngsters. So many people. Nie Tian couldn't help but shake his head and smile as he looked at the dense crowd in the huge square. He didn't expect that a small Tyrant Cloud Academy would actually have so many people participating in the recruitment. The square was crowded with people, and a rough estimate was that there were at least tens of thousands of people. "Boss, today is the selection for Tyrant Cloud Academy. All the people in Blue Cloud Empire who have awakened their origin spirit and are below the age of 20 are here," Jean de Bayo introduced to Nie Tian rather proudly. Nie Tian nodded, looked at Qiu Ling and smiled. "Miss Ling, are you confident?" Qiu Ling frowned slightly and shook her head. "I don't know. Is a recruitment requirement for Tyrant Cloud Academy very high?" Nie Tian couldn't help but ask when he saw Qiu Ling's worried look. Nie Tian knew that Qiu Ling's strength was at the 3rd level of origin spirit, and she was only 13 years old. Although this kind of talent wasn't top-notch, it was still not bad. It shouldn't be a problem for her to enter a martial arts academy in a 3rd-rate empire. Young Master Jean. At this moment, a sneaky-looking young man suddenly ran over. "Jean Ming, You came at the right time. Did you get the information that I wanted? Jean DeBeo asked with a chuckle. Ji Ming didn't rush to answer, but looked at Nye Tian with a shrewd smile and nodded. You must be boss Nye Tian. You know me? Nye Tian smiled faintly. Of course I know you. Ji Ming was very excited and said, Boss Nye Tian is Master Zhang Yifeng's teacher. Everyone in Blue Cloud City knows that. You're now a big shot in Blue Cloud City. Nye Tian couldn't help but smile speechlessly. So I'm already so famous. What happened in the Alchemist Guild had already spread throughout Blue Cloud City in 3 days. Now, the name Nye Tian could be said to be known by everyone in Blue Cloud City. It was no exaggeration to say that Nye Tian was now in the limelight in Blue Cloud City. Ji Ming, stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and tell me what you know. Jean DeBeo was a little impatient as he urged. Yes. Ji Ming laughed mischievously and said, Young Master Jean, I've asked around. This time, the Academy had recruited a total of 180 new students. There were about 120 confirmed spots and less than 60 free spots. If Miss Ling wants to enter the Academy, her results must be in the top 60. 120 already decided. How shady. Jean DeBeo couldn't help but grit his teeth. Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding. Jean DeBeo explained, Tyrant Cloud's recruitment has a fixed quota every year, but most of the quotas have already been decided by the major families in the Imperial City. Only an extremely small portion of the quotas are free quotas. In the past, there were around 100 free spots every year. This year, there were only 60. How goddamn shady. Nye Tian frowned and smiled wryly. He didn't expect that there were so many tricks in the recruitment of a third-rate Empire's martial arts academy. There were a total of 180 spots, and 120 were taken by the major families. Only 60 were left for commoners. It was indeed shady enough. What about the others? Jean DeBeo asked again. Ji Ming pursed his lips and continued. There were a total of 12,000 new students who signed up this year. There were 3 people worth paying attention to. Qin family's Qin Feng, Liang family's Liang Yunlong, and a commoner, Ling Tian. These 3 people are all at the 9th level origin spirit realm, and their origin spirits are all weapon spirits. They're this year's most popular newcomer kings. Newcomer king? Nye Tian glanced at Ji Ming. He had heard Xiao Ling mention before that Xiao Shan was once the newcomer king of Tyrant Cloud Academy. But Nye Tian still didn't know what newcomer king meant. Ji Ming explained, after the Academy confirms the quota of new students, there will be a martial meet for new students to compete in martial arts. The first place will be the newcomer king. What are the benefits of being the newcomer king? Nye Tian asked with a faint smile. The benefits are great. Before Ji Ming could speak, Jean DeBeo snatched it over and said excitedly, The newcomer king can obtain generous rewards. After entering the Academy, the cultivation resources are several times that of ordinary students. Martial arts, martial skills, essence crystals, cultivation rooms, spirit gathering formations, whatever you want. Most importantly, there's also a chance to cultivate with our beautiful dean for 10 days. The beautiful headmistress? Nye Tian was taken aback. Jean DeBeo shrunk his neck and said with a chuckle, Boss, you still don't know, right? Our Tyrant Cloud's dean is a woman, and she's the #1 beauty of Blue Cloud City. Nye Tian shook his head, speechless. However, he was quite surprised that Tyrant Cloud's dean was a woman. Nye Tian suddenly looked at Xiao Shan and said, Xiao Shan, with your relationship with Qi Feng, it shouldn't be difficult to get a reserved spot, right? Why put Miss Linger in such a difficult position? Before Xiao Shan could speak, Xiao Linger said stubbornly, I won't let Uncle Qi help me. I must enter Tyrant Cloud Academy with my own abilities. Nye Tian looked at Xiao Ling and couldn't help but smile. He couldn't tell that Xiao Ling was a girl with a backbone. Sigh. Jean DeBeo sighed and said, Boss, you don't know. I've been begging Ling for days, but she insists on entering the academy with her own abilities. Isn't it the same? It doesn't matter how she gets in, as long as she can enter the academy. Damn fatty, stop talking. Xiao pouted stubbornly. All right, I won't say any more. I won't say any more, Jean de Bao said helplessly. Tian could only smile. In his opinion, Xiao should have no problem entering Tyrant Cloud Academy, but there was no hope for her to compete for the newcomer king. Tyrant Cloud's rules were really interesting. The newcomer king could train with the dean for 10 days. It was indeed very attractive. Even Tian couldn't help but be tempted. What kind of person is your beautiful dean? She sounds pretty good. Tian asked with interest. Jean de Bao smiled and said, Boss, our beautiful dean is called Rui Qianyu. She's a big shot in Blue Cloud City and is publicly recognized as the #1 beauty in Blue Cloud City. She's also very young. I heard that she's only 20 years old. The most terrifying thing is that she's the only true energy realm martial artist in Blue Cloud Empire. 20 years old, true energy realm martial artist. Tian couldn't help but be slightly surprised. In these 3,000 small worlds, a 20-year-old true energy realm martial artist was definitely rare. It seemed that Mou, one of the 3 great monsters of Sumi Ling City, was also a true energy realm martial artist and was also 20 years old. If what Jean de Bao said was true, then Rui Qianyu's martial arts talent was almost no less than Mou's. Sigh. Jean de Bao suddenly sighed and said, I still haven't had the chance to see Dean Rui. How good would it be if I was the newcomer king back then? Tian looked at Jean de Bao. The latter was still at the first level of the Origin Spirit Realm. He really didn't know how he entered Tyrant Cloud Academy back then. If Jean de Bao could be the newcomer king with his strength, then Tyrant Cloud Academy was really trash. Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, Ling Tian. I wonder which of these 3 will be the newcomer king. Being the newcomer king means being able to see the beautiful dean. How enviable. Jean de Bao shook his head and said with an envious expression, Damn fatty, do you really want to see your beautiful dean that much? Xiao said unhappily. That's not it. Jean de Bao smiled and quickly said, With little sister Ling by my side, I don't want to see any dean. Who's with you? Xiao pouted, but there was a strange look in her eyes. Chapter 70. Tian smiled faintly. It seemed that Jean de Bao had a lot of confidence in him. However, he really had no interest. If there was one person worthy of Tian's attention, it would be the dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy. A 20-year-old true element boundary powerhouse with amazing talent was comparable to Mou's. One must know that Mou is one of the 3 monstrous geniuses of Shumi Spirit Capital. Forget it. I really have no interest. Tian carefully thought about it and finally decided not to participate. Sigh. Jean de Bao sighed, feeling deeply regretful. Not interested. At this moment, an extremely unfriendly voice suddenly sounded behind him. Tian turned around and a familiar figure appeared. It was Qin Yuhu. At this time, Qin Yuhu was wearing armor and looked majestic. Behind him were more than a dozen youths in the same attire. They were the people in charge of maintaining the scene of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Qin Yuhu had been injured by Tian 3 days ago. Now he had recovered. It seemed that he had eaten a lot of elixirs. Not interested? I think you don't dare. Qin Yuhu looked at Tian with disdain, a playful expression on his face. Whether I dare or not is my business. What does it have to do with you? Tian smiled faintly. He was not a 3-year-old child. Naturally, he would not fall for Qin Yuhu's provocation. Qin Yuhu sneered. He suddenly looked at Jean de Bao and said, Fatty Jean, you recognize a coward as your boss. This young master really feels that it's not worth it. Jean de Bao's fat face trembled. He roared, Second brother Qin, who this young master recognizes as boss is this young master's business. What do you have to do with it? Qin Yuhu crossed his arms in front of his chest and put on a look that was asking for a beating. He sneered, Of course this is your business. This young master has nothing to do with it. But this young master thinks that you, Jean de Bao, are also a person with status. It's really a pity that you casually recognize a cat or dog as your boss. Qin Yuhu, be careful of your broken mouth. You can fart randomly, but you can't speak randomly. You dare to insult my boss. The consequences are not something you can bear. Jean de Bayo roared angrily. Their quarrel immediately attracted the attention of countless onlookers, and they began to discuss it. Jean de Bayo and Qin Yuhu. The Jin clan and Qin clan are sworn enemies. When these two young masters meet, the smell of gunpowder will be strong. Yes, although the Jin family is rich, Jean de Bayo is a little trash. Up till now, he's still at the first level essence spirit realm, far inferior compared to Qin Yuhu. I heard that Jean de Bayo is often bullied by brother Qin Yuhu in the academy. I wonder if that's true? Listening to the discussions around him, Tian could not help but frown. It seemed like Jean de Bayo had suffered quite a bit from Qin Yuhu and his brother in Tyrant Cloud Academy. It was no wonder why he was so agitated upon seeing Qin Yuhu. Ouch, I'm just telling the truth. Why should young Master Jean get angry over a coward? Qin Yuhu laughed mockingly, glancing at Tian from the corner of his eyes. A strange look flashed across his face. Jean de Bayo was so angry that his fat face was red and swollen, but he was stopped by Tian. Tian looked at Qin Yuhu and said with a faint smile, "Since you want me to participate in this recruitment so much, then I'll participate." Hearing that Tian was finally willing to participate in the recruitment, the corner of Qin Yuhu's mouth suddenly curled up, and a cold smile flashed across his face. "Boss, are you really going to participate?" Jean de Bayo was so excited that he was about to jump up. If Tian entered Tyrant Cloud Academy, he would no longer have to be bullied by the Qin brothers. Tian nodded lightly. "That's great." Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "If boss participates in the recruitment, he'll definitely be the newcomer king. I also believe that big brother Tian will be the newcomer king." Xiulinger was also very happy. Newcomer king? Qin Yuhu sneered at this moment. He looked at Jean de Bayo and said, "Fatty Jean, you dare to use your head to guarantee that he'll be the newcomer king? You're really bragging too much. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" This young master also dares to guarantee that this year's newcomer king is definitely not him. If you're not convinced, let's make a bet. How about it? After saying this, Qin Yuhu's eyes revealed a hint of slyness. Tian was slightly stunned. He could tell at a glance that Qin Yuhu was definitely brewing some kind of conspiracy. "Let's bet." Jean de Bayo took a step forward and shouted, "Say it. What do you want to bet?" "I'm not afraid of betting my life. Young Master Jin's life is so cheap, I don't dare to take it." Qin Yuhu smiled contemptuously, and the slyness in his eyes became even more obvious. He said, "How about this? I know that your Jin family is rich. If I win, the Jin family will compensate the first grade house to the Qin family. How about that?" The first grade house? Jean de Bayo's eyes suddenly widened, and he immediately hesitated. The first grade house was the #1 restaurant in the Imperial City. From a certain point of view, it was also the symbol of the Jin family as the wealthiest in the Imperial City. Qin Yuhu wanted the first grade house right off the bat. This bet seemed a little too big. But at this point, how could Jean de Bayo back down? He immediately made up his mind and shouted, "Fine, I'll bet with you." At this time, Jean Ming wanted to pull Jean de Bayo back, but failed. When Jean de Bayo's words left his mouth, his face turned pale. He thought that he had said it all, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. "Great." Qin Yuhu laughed and said, "Young Master Jean is indeed heroic." Jean de Bayo laughed coldly. "Qin Yuhu, what if I win?" Qin Yuhu smiled slyly and said in a frivolous tone, "Say it yourself. What do you want? As long as my Qin family has it, I'll give it to you." Jean de Bayo thought for a moment, and, as if he thought of something, he suddenly smiled. This young master heard that the Qin family has a set of rank 4 battle armor that was bestowed by the late emperor. "If I win, I want this battle armor." Rank 4 battle armor. Only a rank 4 blacksmith could forge it. Even if an Origin Meridian martial artist wore it, it could withstand the attack of a giant spirit realm martial artist. It was very domineering. Its value was not lower than the first grade house restaurant. Qin Yuhu was slightly stunned, but he immediately recovered and said with a smile, "I couldn't tell. Fatty Jean, You're not stupid and know what good things are. It's rare that this young master is happy today. Rank 4 Golden Thunder Battle Armor. This young master will bet. Very good. Jean de Bayo chuckled and suddenly said, I, Jean de Bayo, am a man of my words. Even a spit can smash a hole. But your words, Qin Yuhu, are bullshit. I don't trust you. I want to find a witness for this bet. This young master has the same intention. Qin Yuhu smiled slyly and agreed readily. Nie Tian watched from the side, a bad premonition in his heart. Qin Yuhu had the strength of Wanxiang first level and had lost to Nie Tian before. Therefore, he definitely knew that the three rookie king-seeded contestants, Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, and Ling Tian, were not Nie Tian's match at all. But he was also so sure that Nie Tian could not win the rookie king. That meant that there would be an even more powerful person appearing in the recruitment this time. Who could this more powerful person be? At this time, many spectators gathered around, but they were all youths. No one was suitable to be a witness. This bet was too big. Ordinary people were not qualified to be a witness at all. Since the two of you are having so much fun, this prince also wants to play. I'll be your witness. How about it? Right at this time, a voice as cold as ice and light as gossamer suddenly sounded. Chapter 71. Jean de Bayo and Qin Yuhu turned around at the same time and looked at the source of the voice. The crowd automatically dispersed, and a young man in luxurious clothes walked over calmly. The young man in luxurious clothes was about 14 or 15 years old. He was handsome and tall, but he had a cold aura and sharp eyes, giving off a gloomy feeling that did not match his age. His name was Lan Binji, the youngest son of the Blue Cloud Emperor and a prince of the Blue Cloud Empire. Although he was not the heir apparent, he was considered one of the strongest contenders for the throne. Prince Binji, Lan Binji walked over. Jean de Bayo and Qin Yuhu hurriedly bowed. The surrounding people also bowed to show their respect. Nie Tian, however, was like a block of ice, not moving an inch. He only glanced at Lan Binji calmly and did not have any other reaction. Lan Binji was not angry. Instead, he looked at Nie Tian and smiled. A person who could make Master Zhang Yifeng acknowledge him as his master is indeed different. Nie Tian's name had spread throughout the imperial city recently. It was not surprising that Lan Binji knew of him. You're also very different, Nie Tian replied indifferently. Although he only glanced at Lan Binji, Nie Tian could feel that this person was gloomy and not easy to deal with. It was best not to provoke him. Moreover, Nie Tian sensed that Lan Binji was very strong. He was actually at the first level of all creations. He was a 14-year-old all creations martial artist with monstrous talent in martial arts. However, this talent paled in comparison to Nie Tian's. In his previous life, Nie Tian was already a spirit wheel warrior at the age of 14. His talent was 10 times better than Lan Binji's. Jean de Bayo was afraid that Nie Tian would anger Lan Binji. He hurriedly stepped forward and said, Your Highness, are you really going to be our witness? Lan Binji glanced at Jean de Bayo. An emperor does not joke. Emperor? Jean de Bayo's heart skipped a beat. I don't think you are an emperor. The simple word, Jun, revealed Lan Binji's ambition. Qin Yuhu stole a glance at Lan Binji, as if he was confirming something. Then he smiled sinisterly and bowed deeply to Lan Binji. Your Highness Binji is personally acting as a witness for this lowly one. This lowly one is in awe and trepidation. Jean de Bayo rolled his eyes as he watched from the side. In the past, he only knew that Qin Yuhu had a bad character, but he didn't know that his bootlicking skills were so top-notch. Lan Binji casually waved his hand and said, This prince has clearly heard your bet. If the two of you have no objection, this prince will reluctantly be a witness. What do you think? Your Highness Bingi, I have no objections. Qin Yuhu quickly said, I have no objections either. Jean de Bayo nodded. With Lan Binji as a witness and so many spectators, Qin Yuhu wouldn't dare to go back on his word. All right. The corners of Lan Binji's mouth curled up, his voice suddenly raising as he said in a clear voice, This prince announces that the bet between Qin Yuhu and Jean de Bayo takes effect immediately. No matter what the result is, neither side is allowed to go back on their word. Good. The spectators cheered in unison. Jean de Bayo looked at Niet Tian happily. He was very confident. He had seen with his own eyes how Niet Tian killed a saber-toothed panther in one move. Furthermore, Niet Tian had defeated Qin Yuhu. With such strength, how could Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, or Ling Tian compare? However, at this moment, Ji Ming was on the verge of tears and almost collapsed. The two of you, take your time. This prince has something to do, so I'll take my leave first. With a faint smile, Lan Binji turned around and left. The crowd automatically made way for him. Your Highness, this lowly one will accompany you. Qin Yuhu chuckled and hurriedly followed. Before leaving, he didn't forget to sneer at Jean de Bayo. What are you so proud of? Do you really think you can win? Jean de Bayo angrily scolded. He then looked at Niet Tian and said, Boss, this time it's all up to you. You must help this brother win the Qin family's rank 4 armor. I'll do my best. Niet Tian nodded lightly. If there were only those guys at the 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm among the freshmen this time, Niet Tian had a 100% chance of winning. However, he felt that Qin Yuhu wouldn't be so foolish. There seemed to be some conspiracy. Slowly, the crowd dispersed. However, Ji Ming suddenly burst into tears and shouted, Young Master Jean. Jean de Bayo was stunned and said angrily, What is this? Crying from agitation? Ji Ming had a bitter look on his face. He suddenly said in a low voice, Young Master Jean, I still have a piece of news that I haven't told you. What news? Jean de Bayo's face darkened. He faintly felt uneasy. Ji Ming looked left and right. Seeing that there was no one around, he swallowed his saliva and said, The Academy's newcomer king this time has been decided internally. Internally decided newcomer king? Jean de Bayo was stunned. He had a doubtful look on his face. Impossible. Every year, Tyrant Cloud Academy would internally decide many names. However, internally decided newcomer king had never happened before. After all, the newcomer king was chosen during the freshman martial gathering. Could it be that he could control the outcome of the martial gathering? Jean de Bayo's first reaction was that it was impossible. Internally decided? Xiaoling was also very doubtful. She asked carefully, Then who is the newcomer king? Ji Ming's face froze. After a long time, he finally said a name, Prince of Binji. Prince of Binji? Jean de Bayo screamed and almost jumped up. How is this possible? Lan Binji was a prince. With such a status, there was no need for him to participate in the recruitment. It was even less likely that he would be interested in the newcomer king reward. Jean de Bayo would be the first to not believe that Lan Binji would be the newcomer king. However, the next moment, he suddenly thought of something and cried out, Why is Prince of Binji here? Ji Ming's entire body crumbled. Prince of Binji is here to watch the freshman assessment. Jean de Bayo froze. He was so stunned that he couldn't speak for a long time. This is too much. After a long time, Jean de Bayo slapped his thigh and was about to cry. He finally understood why Qin Yuhu had taken the initiative to bet with him, and why Lan Binji had volunteered to be a witness. All of this was definitely a conspiracy. A blatant conspiracy. The first-grade residence was the symbol of the Jean family. Without the first-grade residence, would the Jean family still be the richest family in the Imperial City? Half a day later, Jean de Bayo finally calmed down. Ji Ming had a depressed look on his face as he explained, I also don't know why Prince of Binji would participate in the recruitment of Tyrant Cloud. I just found out about this news not long ago. Originally, I wanted to tell young Master Jean as a surprise. Who knew? Surprise your sister. Jean de Bayo was already speechless. This time, he was really surprised. He was so surprised that he wanted to cry. Lan Binji was participating in the freshman selection. Who would dare to steal his limelight? As long as he appeared in the freshman selection, he would be the newcomer king. There was practically no need for it to be decided, and no one would dare to fight against him. Defeating Lan Binji was equivalent to slapping the royal family's face. Who dares? This question appeared in Jean de Bayo's mind. An answer suddenly appeared. Niet Tian dares. De Bayo. At this time, Tian, who didn't have much reaction, finally opened his mouth and patted on Jean de Bayo's shoulder. Don't worry. I am definitely going to be the newcomer king. His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder that completely woke Jean de Bayo up. What kind of person was Tian? He was an arrogant person that made one's hair stand on end. Back at the Alchemist Guild, even Zhang Yifeng had to kneel down and acknowledge him as his teacher. So what if he slapped the royal family's face? Without a doubt, no one would be able to stop Tian. Chapter 72. Newcomer King. To Tian, such an identity wasn't very attractive. Cultivation resources, elixirs, crystals, training runes, spirit gathering formation, he did not care about any of these. The only thing that interested him was the 20-year-old True Element Stage Dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Of course, he could also help Jean de Bayo win the bet. More importantly, Tian could see that this was a trap set by Qin Yuhu for Jean de Bayo, waiting for Jean de Bayo to fall into it. Tian saw things very clearly. He knew that even if Jean de Bayo did not make the bet with Qin Yuhu, the latter would still think of a way to trap Jean de Bayo. Rather than passively waiting for Qin Yuhu to set up a new plot, it was better to simply dive into the plot and directly break it. In the face of true strength, all plots were futile. Tian faintly felt that his biggest competitor in the freshman martial gathering was definitely Lan Binji. It was not because Lan Binji was the newcomer king, but because he was very strong. He would definitely be a formidable opponent. At this time, there was a sudden commotion in the plaza. A middle-aged martial artist appeared, surrounded by a group of young martial artists. Boss, Dean Fan is out. The freshman assessment is about to begin. Seeing the middle-aged martial artist, Jean de Bayo was a little excited. The middle-aged martial artist was called Fan Jinwu, the vice dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy, one of the strongest martial artists in the kingdom of Blue Clouds. Fan Jinwu was none other than Fan Jinji's elder brother, and the main culprit who framed Qiu Shan. Fan Jinwu did not reveal a trace of elemental energy. Just by standing there, he emitted a strong and dignified aura. The dozens of young martial artists around Fan Jinwu were all wearing the uniform of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Each of them had an imposing appearance and were full of arrogance. All of them were All Creations martial artists. Fan Jinwu. Seeing Fan Jinwu appear from afar, Qiu Shan's eyes were bloodshot, and his whole body trembled. Qiu Shan, don't be impulsive. If you want revenge, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Tian put a hand on Qiu Shan's shoulder and said indifferently. Qiu Shan immediately calmed down and bowed. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Nye. Qiu Shan really wanted revenge, and he could not wait to tear Fan Jinwu into pieces and grind his bones into ashes. However, he was clearly no match for Fan Jinwu. At this time, the crowd dispersed. Fan Jinwu stepped onto the high platform, and his thunderous voice resounded. Silence, everyone. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a strange power that could spread thousands of meters around the square, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. The originally noisy square immediately quieted down. Fan Jinwu's sharp, eagle-like gaze swept across the square like a cold breeze. After a short while, he said in a low voice, I'm the Vice Dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy, Fan Jinwu. I am fully responsible for the enrollment this time. After a pause, Fan Jinwu's voice became more oppressive. Tyrant Cloud's recruitment requirements are very strict. The age of the examinees must be below 20 years of age, and their strength had at least reached the Essence Spirit Realm. If anyone doesn't meet these two conditions, this old man advises you to leave on your own. Otherwise, if you're discovered, you'll have your Yuan meridians crippled, and if it's serious, your life will be in danger. After saying that, a bright light shot out from his eyes, as if he could see through everyone. Those who were in his line of sight avoided him. Only one person didn't move, and looked straight at Fan Jinwu with an extremely resolute gaze. Maybe it was a misperception, but Tian felt that Fan Jinwu's gaze was noticeably on him, as if he was a little surprised and a little angry. This wasn't a misperception. Fan Jinwu was indeed very angry. Although Tian and Fan Jinwu hadn't met face-to-face, they already knew each other's names. Nietian had almost fought with Fan Jinji, and had even become Zhang Yifeng's teacher a few days ago. This was already enough to attract Fan Jinwu's attention. Fan Jinwu swept his cold gaze across Nietian and didn't say anything else. After announcing, he turned and left. Now, let the freshman examination begin. Fan Jinwu didn't care about the examination. What was truly important was the freshman martial meet. After a while, the examination officially began. The first was a strength test. There were more than 100 testing platforms on the square, and every testing platform had a 10-meter-tall strength testing steel. Beside the strength testing steel stood a student of Tyrant Cloud Academy, in charge of recording the results. The rules of the examination were very simple. The examinee struck the steel with all his strength, and with a strength of 5,000 kilograms, he would pass. The examinees were all Origin Spirit realm martial artists. After awakening their Origin Spirit, their Origin Meridians would be strengthened quite a bit, and with the addition of martial skills, if they couldn't hit 5,000 kilograms of strength, it meant that their talent was too poor, and they didn't have the qualifications to enter Tyrant Cloud. Nietian walked to the nearest testing platform and stood in line. Jean DeBeo had been following beside him the whole time and whispered, "Boss, the limit of the strength testing steel is 50,000 kilograms. You could just casually hit 20,000 kilograms and shock them." Nietian smiled faintly and nodded. His current strength was at the 4th level of Origin Spirit Realm, and he had awakened the power of 16 stars in his body. A casual punch would have 20,000 kilograms of strength. The people in front of him started the examination one after another. 2,000 kilograms eliminated. 3,500 kilograms eliminated. 3,000 kilograms eliminated. Out of the tens of people in front, only one person hit 5,000 kilograms, barely passing. However, hitting 5,000 kilograms was only 1 point. The final ranking of Tyrant Cloud Academy used a point system, and in the strength test, every 5,000 kilograms was 1 point. If you could hit 50,000 kilograms, then you would get 10 points straight away. After martial artists awakened 9 essence meridians, they would normally be able to reach 1,000 kilograms of strength. After the Origin Spirit awakened, the power of the essence meridians would skyrocket by several times, reaching 3,000 to 4,000 kilograms of strength. If coupled with martial techniques, hitting 5,000 kilograms of strength was very normal. But to want to hit out with 10,000 kilograms of strength, one had to at least reach the 5th level of Origin Spirit Realm. People like Nietian, who was at the 4th level of Origin Spirit Realm, with pure strength exceeding several tens of thousands of kg, were completely monstrous. The majority of those taking the examination were 1st or 2nd level Origin Spirit martial artists, so very few people could reach the standard of 5,000 kilograms. What a powerful Origin Spirit! At this time, an exclamation suddenly came from the front. Nietian looked over. On the testing platform, there was a youth dressed in purple, looking 13 or 14 years old, with a huge black hammer floating behind him. His Origin Spirit surged, almost condensing into a material form. 9th level of Origin Spirit Realm. His Origin Spirit was just a step away from condensing into a material form. Without a doubt, this youth was a 9th level Origin Spirit Realm martial artist. Boss Nietian, this person is Qin Feng, Qin Yuhu's cousin, Jean DeBeo said in a low voice. Qin Feng, Qin Yuhu's cousin. Nietian frowned slightly. Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, Ling Tian. These three were people that Jin Ming specially reminded him to pay attention to. Nietian did not think that Qin Feng was actually Qin Yuhu's cousin. Looking at the latter's aura, his strength was very strong. Right at this time, Qin Feng on the stage moved. Dominating Sky Hammer. Dominating Sky Strike. The aura of the dominating Sky Hammer skyrocketed, and with a loud bang, it hammered towards the strength testing monument. Boom! The enormous strength testing monument shook violently, and a pillar of light shot up 5 to 6 meters high, blinding everyone's eyes. Countless people stared at the strength testing monument. The blinding pillar of light caused the entire place to go silent, as if time had instantly stopped. 30,000 kilograms. The recording officer on the testing platform reacted with a face full of shock. The strength testing monument was 10 meters tall, and the limit was 50,000 kilograms. At this time, the pillar of light shot up 6 meters high. That meant that the strength of Qin Feng's hammer had reached a shocking 30,000 kilograms. 30,000 kilograms. Too terrifying. My God, could it be that Qin Feng is even more powerful than Qin Yuhu? Jean de Bao's fat face was pale. Chapter 73. The onlookers were shocked by Qin Feng's strength, but Nie Tian only smiled faintly. Qin Feng's Tyrant Sky Hammer is a strength-type elemental spirit. With the strength of a 9th-level origin spirit and a high-level martial technique, it's not strange for him to strike with 30,000 kilograms of strength. Nie Tian looked at Qin Feng and thought. Qin Feng's display of strength was shocking, but Nie Tian was not afraid. With his current strength, even if he didn't use Star Souls, it was more than enough to deal with Qin Feng. The commotion caused by Qin Feng took a long time to calm down. After a while, Nie Tian walked to the testing platform. It was his turn. Boss, do your best. Jean de Bao nodded heavily, but he was sweating in his heart. Qin Feng's display of strength was too strong, and he couldn't help but worry. To win the bet, Nie Tian's enemy wasn't just Lan Binji alone, but everyone, including Qin Feng. Needless to say, after seeing Qin Feng's strength, Jean de Bao felt a little guilty. Nie Tian leaped and stepped onto the testing platform. Look, it's that guy. He's called Nie Tian, Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher. Just now, Jean de Bao and Qin Yuhu made a bet on whether or not he could take the crown of Rookie King. Is this guy really that strong? Is he worth Jean de Bao using first-grade residence as a wager? Tisk. I think he's just average, far from Qin Feng, much less Prince Binji. This time, the Rookie King is definitely Prince Binji. The others are all cannon fodder. It's a pity that young Master Jean is going to lose first-grade residence. That's right, this guy is just a loach that popped out of nowhere, using his luck as a lackey. He still thinks he's a dragon. He wants to show off in the Imperial City, and in the end, he won't even be able to wear his pants. Nie Tian's appearance immediately attracted whispers from the crowd. Qin Feng was also watching at this moment, and he laughed disdainfully. This is the guy who castrated Qin Yulong? He looks very average. Nie Tian scanned the crowd below the stage and heard all the discussions. The corners of his lips curled up in an evil manner as he thought to himself, since you guys don't want to see me in the limelight, then I will steal everyone's limelight. He was now a famous person in Blue Cloud City. His identity as Zhang Yifeng's teacher alone made countless people jealous. Who knew how many people were waiting to see him make a fool of himself? However, he would definitely not let these people get what they wanted. The strength measuring monument. If I remember correctly, it should be testing the strongest point of strength. As long as I focus my strength on one point, the value of my strength will definitely be higher, Nie Tian said in his heart. Nie Tian was very clear about the principles of the strength measuring monument. The strength measuring monument was very sensitive and it tested the strongest point of the attack. Normally, when people see such a huge strength testing steel, they would choose to use a large area of effect martial technique and try their best to deal a huge blow to the strength testing steel. This was precisely entering the wrong zone. Just like Qin Feng, if he could use a more suitable martial technique, his strength would definitely be more than 30,000 Jin. I'm currently at the Origin Spirit level 4 and have awakened the power of 16 stars in my body. My pure strength is about 40,000 Jin. If combined with the Easter Emperor Finger or the Divine War Emperor Fist, my strength would definitely exceed 50,000 Jin. If I focus all my strength on one point, the instant attack may be able to pierce through the strength-testing steel. Calculating in his heart, yet Tian frowned slightly. He was very dissatisfied with his current strength. The limit of the strength-testing steel was 50,000 Jin. However, to pierce through the strength-testing steel, one would need at least 70,000 Jin of strength. Nietion wanted to directly pierce through the strength-testing steel. "Brat, if you don't dare to make a move, then scram. Don't waste my time." Seeing that Nietion did not make a move, the examiner had an impatient expression and coldly reprimanded. Nietion glanced at him and did not say anything. He already had an idea in his heart. Since he had decided to be in the limelight, then he might as well make a big one, and a big one at that. With that thought, he no longer hesitated. He took a step forward and activated his elemental meridians. His elemental energy surged, and a strong aura enveloped his entire body. Nie Tianling looked coldly at the strength-testing steel in front of him. His eyes were filled with extreme determination. "Brat, are you going to make a move or not? No matter how good your posture is, if you can't shit, what's the use?" Seeing that Nie Tian had not made a move, the examiner became even more impatient. Nie Tianling glanced at him coldly, and in the next moment his body moved. He was going to make a move. The elemental energy in his body surged, and he raised his arms slightly. It was a simple movement, but it revealed a heart-palpitating aura. His eyes were like torches and as cold as iron. In the next moment, Nie Tian pointed with both of his fingers, and the air-breaking technique exploded, causing the surrounding atmosphere to shake. A whistling sound could be heard in the air. The Eastern Emperor finger caused the air to spin, and like an arrow, it shot towards the strength-testing steel. Pong! A dull sound could be heard. The 10-meter-tall strength-testing steel shook slightly, and there was no more movement. The scene suddenly stopped, as if it was frozen. Everyone stared at the testing platform, not knowing what had happened. Just at this moment, suddenly, from the bottom of the strength-testing steel, a pillar of light shot up into the sky, blinding everyone's eyes. Looking at the pillar of light that shot up to the top of the strength-testing steel, the entire place was dead silent. The gazes of the surrounding testing platforms were also attracted by the pillar of light. They all looked over and were all stunned. A 10-meter pillar of light. The strength-testing steel only shook and didn't even shake? Did I really see it correctly? That was what everyone was thinking. Everything was too unbelievable. A 10-meter pillar of light meant 50,000 kilograms of force, but the strength-testing steel didn't even shake. How was this possible? But that was the truth. It had clearly happened. 10 meters. After a while, the examiner finally reacted and looked at the transparent hole on the strength-testing steel in shock. The shock in his heart was at its peak. With one finger, the strength-testing steel was actually pierced through. The limit of the strength-testing steel was 50,000 kilograms, but to pierce through the strength-testing steel, one would need at least 70,000 kilograms of force. Even Manifestation Realm martial artists might not be able to possess 70,000 kilograms of force. The examiner looked at Nie Tian as if he was looking at a monster. His eyes were filled with deep shock, and at the same time, there was a hint of fear. Nie Tian had a calm look, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a strange smile, and muttered, "Break! Crack, crack, crack." Just as he said that, spider web-like cracks suddenly appeared on the place where the strength-testing steel was pierced through. Rumble! In the next moment, a loud sound rang out, and the enormous strength-testing steel suddenly shattered. Under everyone's gaze, it became a pile of crushed stones. How is this possible? Just casually pointing a finger, and he actually shattered the strength-testing steel. This was too shocking. Everyone was stupefied in an instant. They widened their eyes and looked at Nie Tian in disbelief. Nie Tian smiled faintly and jumped down from the testing platform. Since so many people wanted to see him make a fool of himself, he had to be in the limelight. Nie Tian's guess towards the strength-testing steel was completely correct, and his grasp of his own strength was also incomparably accurate. The main reason why he was able to control his strength so well was because of Nie Tian's strong mental power. What Nie Tian wanted was to be in the limelight. Chapter 74. After a long time, when Nie Tian walked down from the testing platform, the audience was still in shock and had yet to recover from their shock. At this moment, a pair of sinister eyes stared at Nie Tian viciously from afar. "You like to show off so much. You're courting death." Lon Benji's face darkened, as if he had been slapped in the face in front of everyone. He was a prince, and the most beloved prince of the emperor. Ever since he was young, he had been surrounded by an unparalleled halo, which made him look down on everyone. This time, he participated in the Cloud Tyrant selection with another purpose, which was to raise his prestige in the kingdom of blue clouds. If he could show off his strength in the Cloud Tyrant selection, shock everyone, and take the crown of the Rookie King, then his reputation and prestige in the kingdom of blue clouds would definitely soar. This would undoubtedly be beneficial for him in the fight for the throne. But now, someone wanted to steal his limelight. In Lan Binji's eyes, this was intolerable. At this moment, Nie Tian was on his death list. Walking down from the testing platform, Nie Tian had a smile on his face, and he looked very relaxed. Jean de Bayo, Qiu Shan, Qiu Linger, Nie Yuro, and the rest were extremely excited as they looked at Nie Tian. "Boss, you're awesome. No wonder you're my boss." "Huh." Jean de Bayo almost jumped up. The strength that Nie Tian had displayed was too shocking, and he was very excited. "Big brother Nie Tian is so powerful," Nie Yuro said happily. Qiu Linger also exerted a force of 10,000 pounds, but compared to Nie Tian, she was far from it. Qiu Shan looked at Nie Tian, and besides surprise, there was more shock in his eyes. He felt that he could not see through this young man in front of him anymore. The looks in the eyes of the surrounding people changed as well. The disdain and contempt from before had completely disappeared, and it was replaced by shock and fear. This was the majesty of a powerhouse. Strength would always be the greatest authority, so it feels so good to be in the limelight. Not bad. Nie Tian smiled faintly and thought to himself. Next, the strength test continued. With Nie Tian's performance, very few people caused a commotion. Only Liang Yunlong and Ling Tian, who were equally as famous as Qin Feng, caused a small ruckus when they fought with 30,000 kilograms. As for Lan Binji, he did not participate in the assessment, but directly entered the freshman martial meet. This was decided by his status as a prince. Being able to participate in the freshman martial meet was already unprecedented. In the past, the members of the imperial family would enter Tyrant Cloud Academy directly. A few hours later, the strength test ended. Just this alone eliminated 95% of the participants. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few hundred people left out of the more than 10,000 examinees. Next was the second test, the elemental spirit test. "Everyone get out of the way." Just at this moment, a shout rang out. Dozens of gray-clothed cultivators appeared, and the crowd automatically made way for them. Under the protection of the gray-clothed martial artists, more than a dozen finely dressed alchemists slowly walked over. The Yuan Spirit Test, as the name suggested, was to test the aptitude of a martial artist's Yuan spirit. Of course, ordinary martial artists did not have the qualifications to assess the aptitude of an elemental spirit. Only respected alchemists had this qualification. Zhang Yifeng. From afar, Nie Tian saw that the leader of the alchemists was none other than Zhang Yifeng. "Boss, it's Grandmaster Zhang." Jean de Bayo also noticed Zhang Yifeng and chuckled. "Teacher." Zhang Yifeng saw Nie Tian from afar and quickly walked over, bowing respectfully to the latter. Nie Tian glanced at Zhang Yifeng, nodded and said, "Both eyes have returned to normal, and the redness between his eyebrows has also disappeared. Not bad. Thank you, teacher, for saving me." Zhang Yifeng bowed again, very respectfully. He followed Nie Tian's instructions and indeed succeeded in suppressing the doomsday flames in his body and had gradually returned to normal. When the crowd saw Zhang Yifeng bowing to Nie Tian, they all cried out in surprise. Although most of them knew that Zhang Yifeng had become Nie Tian's disciple, but seeing it with their own eyes, they still found it hard to believe. "You go." Nie Tian did not want to waste Zhang Yifeng's time, and moved aside to let him pass. After a while, hundreds of participants arrived at the Yuan Spirit Test Hall. There were a total of 6 test rooms, and in each room, there were 2 alchemists and 4 gray-clothed martial artists. Zhang Yifeng and another alchemist, Zhang Yu, were in the first room. "Respected alchemist, my name is Li Longman." The first tester appeared and was very respectful. "Begin." Zhang Yifeng nodded and said, Li Longman did not dare to be negligent, and immediately revealed his Yuan spirit, which was a porcupine. He operated his Yuan meridian, and under the surge of Yuan Qi, the Yuan spirit looked more solid, and the bristles on its body stood up, giving people a feeling of sharpness. Li Longman put in a lot of effort, but unfortunately, Zhang Yifeng and Zhang Yu only glanced at him and then looked at each other and directly gave the result. 1 point. 1 point. Hearing this result, Li Longman's body trembled, and his whole body exuded an uncontrollable anger. He tried his best to show his Yuan spirit, but Zhang Yifeng and Zhang Yu only glanced at him and did not even see what his Yuan spirit was, and directly gave him 1 point. It was really infuriating. Zhang Yifeng slightly raised his head and glared at Li Longman. Immediately, the gray-clothed martial artist behind him made his move. Bang! A huge fist shadow flew over and directly blasted Li Longman out of the room. What a dog! How dare you question Master Zhang Yifeng's judgment? Courting death. An angry roar came from the room. Li Longman lay on the ground, unable to get up for a long time. But the surrounding people all looked at him with disdain and contempt, without the slightest bit of sympathy. This was the rule of this world. Without strength, one had no right to speak. Originally, the Yuan spirit test was the most important test, even more important than the test of strength, because the aptitude of the Yuan spirit determined the martial artist's future achievements. But the Yuan spirit test of Tyrant Cloud Academy was just a formality, because there were too many kinds of Yuan spirits, and they were too complicated. Even alchemists could not really evaluate the aptitude of the Yuan spirit. Only the Yuan spirit wheel could test the aptitude of a Yuan spirit. The Yuan spirit wheel was the spiritual tool that Mo Feng used to test Mo Rushi's Yuan spirit. The Yuan spirit wheel was a 7th-ranked spiritual tool, and only big sects and forces had it. In the whole Blue Cloud Empire, no one had seen what the Yuan spirit will look like. Without the Yuan spirit wheel, the Yuan spirit test had become the most unreliable test. The same Yuan spirit was randomly graded, ranging from 1 point to 10 points, and it was decided by the alchemist. Those disciples of big clans who had been decided internally relied on the Yuan spirit test to surpass the others. With Li Longman as an example, no one dared to express any dissatisfaction in the following tests. Those disciples of big clans came out of the testing room, and all of them had smiles on their faces, while the commoner disciples all had sullen faces. This was something that couldn't be helped. This world was unfair to begin with. Soon, it was Nie Tian's turn. Coincidentally, the group he was in was Zhang Yifeng's test. Without any hesitation, Nie Tian strode into the testing room. Chapter 75. Zhang Yifeng was surprised to see Nie Tian. He did not expect that Nie Tian would also participate in the recruitment of Tyrant Cloud Academy. When he saw Nie Tian earlier, he thought that the latter was just there to watch the fun. Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and said directly, "I don't want others to see my original spirit." Nie Tian's original spirit was the chaotic original coffin. He did not want others to see it. He had been worried about this just now, but now that it was Zhang Yifeng's test, there was no problem. Of course, Zhang Yifeng said quickly. The other alchemist, Zhang Yu, and a few other warriors knew the relationship between Nie Tian and Zhang Yifeng, so they did not dare to object and nodded. "Then can I go now?" Nie Tian smiled faintly. "Yes, of course." Zhang Yifeng quickly walked out to see Nie Tian out. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and said to Zhang Yifeng, "There's a girl called Xiuling, or later. I don't want her score to be too low." "I understand." Zhang Yifeng nodded. "All right, you can go back now," Nie Tian said, and turned to walk out of the testing room. Zhang Yifeng returned to his seat, looking very happy. He could not ask for more than a chance to do things for Nie Tian. "Master Zhang, how many points will Mr. Nie's original spirit be given?" Another alchemist, Zhang Yu, asked carefully. "Whatever." Zhang Yifeng chuckled. 10 points then." Zhang Yu's face darkened. 10 points was the highest score. Zhang Yifeng wanted to perform well, but he was actually harming Nie Tian by doing so. The higher Nie Tian's score was, the more attention he would get, and the more hatred Lan Binji would have for him. Lan Binji was a prince. Since he was participating in Tyrant Cloud Academy's recruitment, how could he allow others to steal his limelight? Walking out of the testing room, Nie Tian felt relaxed. Now they only needed to wait for Qiu Ling, Er's original spirit test to end, and then they could return to Jin Mansion. Tyrant Cloud Academy only tested strength and original spirit. The results will be posted tomorrow. Those who ranked in the top 180 could enter Tyrant Cloud Academy and participate in the freshman martial meet. Soon, Qiu Ling Er's elemental spirit test ended, and she walked out with a smile on her face. Nie Tian smiled faintly. It seemed that Zhang Yifeng was reliable. Without further ado, everyone left immediately. As soon as he returned to the Jin residence, a servant hurriedly ran over. "Young master, you're finally back. Master is looking for you." The servant saw Jean de Bayo and hurriedly said as he wiped the beads of sweat off his forehead. "Got it." Jean de Bayo agreed and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Looks like father already knows about the bet. The bet between Jean de Bayo and Qin Yuhu had long since spread throughout Blue Cloud City. For Jin Mingxin to be in such a hurry to find Jean de Bayo, he must have heard about the bet. "I'll go with you." Nie Tian nodded. Nie Tian was determined to win the Rookie King. Seeing the legendary beautiful Dean was the only thing he was interested in. However, Nie Tian wanted to hear Jin Mingxin's opinion and inquire about the situation of the Bloodbat sect. Qiu Shan brought Qiu Linger and Neiro back first, while Nie Tian and Jean de Bayo went to the conference hall together. The two quickly arrived at the hall. Off in the distance, Nie Tian saw Jin Mingxin sitting in an old-fashioned wooden armchair in the hall. Sitting across from him was a young man who appeared to be about 18 or 19 years old. Seeing Jean de Bayo and Nie Tian appear, the youth stood up and laughed loudly. "You two must be Mr. Nie Tian and young Master Jean de Bayo. Who are you?" Jean de Bayo had never seen this youth before and was slightly surprised. Nie Tian observed the other party. This was an extremely handsome youth with a kind smile on his face. He looked approachable, but there was a cold aura about him that made him look a little awkward. What surprised Nie Tian even more was that this youth's appearance was somewhat familiar. He actually looked somewhat similar to Lan Binji. Jin Mingxin hurriedly stood up and scolded Jean de Bayo. "De Bayo, don't be rude. This is our Blue Cloud Empire's Crown Prince. Quickly greet him." "Crown Prince." Jean de Bayo was shocked and hurriedly bowed. "Jean de Bayo greets Crown Prince." "Crown Prince?" Nie Tian was slightly surprised. No wonder this person looked similar to Lan Binji. They were brothers. The youth in front of him was none other than the Blue Cloud Empire's Crown Prince, Lan Bingxin. He was also Lan Binji's elder brother. Could it be that he is here because of the bet? He advised me not to compete with Lan Binji for the Rookie King. Nie Tian was trying to guess Lan Bingxin's intentions. Ahem. Jin Mingxin saw that Nie Tian did not react and could only give him 2 dry coughs to remind him. Although Nie Tian's identity was special, it was better not to be too rude in front of the Crown Prince. No matter what, Lan Bingxin was the nominal successor of the Blue Cloud Empire and the future Royal Azure Emperor. Nie Tian only nodded his head slightly and did not say anything. Although the other party was the Crown Prince, Nie Tian did not take it to heart. Lan Bingxin did not mind. Instead, he bowed respectfully to Nie Tian and said, "Mr. Nie is young and talented. I heard that Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng is Mr. Nie's disciple. May I know if this is true?" "Zhang Yifeng is only my disciple in name. I have not officially accepted him as a disciple," Nie Tian said indifferently. Nie Tian did not have a good impression of Lan Bingxin. He always felt that the other party looked amiable on the surface, but was very gloomy on the inside. Disciple in name? Lan Bingxin could not conceal the shock in his heart. He swallowed his saliva and froze on the spot. Lan Bingxin naturally knew what it meant to be a disciple in name. He never thought that the arrogant Zhang Yifeng would be willing to be a disciple in name of a youth. Nie Tian said indifferently, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Cold sweat seeped out of Lan Bingxin's forehead. He raised his head and looked at Nie Tian, then suddenly knelt down on one knee. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this." Jin Mingxin was also taken aback. He never thought that Lan Bingchun, the dignified crown prince, would actually kneel down to Nie Tian. Jean de Bao was stunned on the spot. He had no idea what was going on. Your Highness the Crown Prince, what is the meaning of this? Nie Tian slightly frowned, not knowing what Lan Bingchun was trying to do. Lan Bingchun raised his head and looked at Nie Tian with a solemn expression and said, Mr. Ne, Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng and I are good friends. Furthermore, I'm also an alchemist. Since Mr. Nie can be Grandmaster Zhang's teacher, you can also be my teacher. I was impulsive. Please accept me as Mr. Nie's disciple. Nie Tian took a look at Lan Bingchun and said, Spiritual power of level 24. You are a second-ranked alchemist, right? Lan Bingchun nodded his head heavily. Towards Nie Tian, being able to see through the strength of his spiritual power with just a glance, he did not find it strange at all. Lan Bingchun said even more respectfully, Mr. Nie, I know that my talent is dull, and I don't dare to have any extravagant requests. I only hope that I can become Mr. Nie's disciple in name. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and said, If you want to become my disciple in name, your talent is still far from enough. You better give up on this thought. That indifferent sentence caused Jin family's father and son and Lan Bingchun to be stunned on the spot. The dignified crown prince begged Nie Tian to accept him as his disciple in name, and Nie Tian actually rejected him. Chapter 76. It took Lan Bingchun a while to react. He didn't think that Nie Tian would reject him so bluntly. Nie Tian's reaction made Lan Bingchun feel a bit awkward. He looked at Jin Mingxin, clearly asking for help. Jin Mingxin deliberately avoided Lan Bingchun's gaze. At this time, he didn't want to interfere with Nie Tian's decision, and he felt that he couldn't. Nie Tian was clearly not the kind of person who would easily change his mind. Your Highness, please get up. I won't accept you as my disciple. Nie Tian said lightly. Not even as an honorary disciple. Lan Bingchun looked up at Nie Tian, his expression incomparably disappointed. This was the first time he had received such a big blow in his life. Nie Tian said, If you really want to become my disciple, then prove your talent to me. How? Lan Bingchun jumped up, suddenly full of spirit. Everyone had the spirit of not admitting defeat. If you say I can't do it, then I'll show you. Lan Bingchun was currently in this kind of mood. Nie Tian couldn't help but smile. Thinking for a moment, he said, Have you refined the unblocking meridian pill before? Yes. Lan Bingchun nodded. The unblocking meridian pill is a second-grade spirit pill. It can help a cultivator unblock the small meridians in the body and improve their physique. Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, I'll tell you another pill formula for the meridian connecting pill. If you can concoct the meridian connecting pill within a month, I'll accept you as my disciple in name. There are other pill recipes for the unblocking meridian pill? Lan Bingchun was startled. Of course. Nie Tian smiled. Purple Ganoderma, Heaven Essence Lotus, 3-leaf grass, golden sprout, and a second-grade wood attribute monster core. This is the pill recipe. You can determine the proportion of ingredients and the order of refinement yourself. No problem, right? No problem. Lan Bingchun nodded confidently. What Nie Tian said was a very simple pill recipe, but it was a great test of the alchemist's patience. The proportion of ingredients and the order of adding needed to be tested countless times. Good, then I wish you good luck. Nie Tian smiled. He only gave Lan Bingchun 1 month. Mr. Nie, I'll take my leave. Lan Bingchun bowed and said, not wanting to stay for too long. Nie Tian nodded slightly, and Jin Mingxin quickly said, Take your leave, Crown Prince. No need. Lan Bingchun seemed a little disappointed. She nodded and turned to leave. The guards at the door followed Lan Bingchun and left. Only when Lan Bingchun's figure completely disappeared did Jin Mingxin let out a long breath. Father, the Crown Prince, Jin said. Father, His Highness the Crown Prince has never had any contact with our family. Why did he suddenly appear this time? Don't tell me you're here to take me as your master? Jin de Bao couldn't help but ask. Taking a sip of tea, Jin Mingxin turned to Nie Tian and said, Indeed, Lan Bingchun came to the Jin mansion for Mr. Nie. He's really here to take me as his master. Jean de Bayo let out a strange cry and said, I thought he came because of the bet. In less than a day, the bet between Jean de Bayo and Qin Yuhu had already spread throughout the entire Blue Cloud City. Almost everyone knew about it. Nietan, however, shook his head and said, Lan Bingchen must have her own reasons for becoming my disciple. Jin Mingxin asked, What does Mr. Nie think? Nie Tian looked up and pondered for a moment before saying, If my speculations are correct, Lan Bingchen wants me to defeat the Ice Knight Prince and become the Rookie King. No way, De Bayo said. Crown Prince and Bing Yi are brothers. Does he not want his brother to win? Jin Mingxin took a sip of tea and said with a faint smile, De Bayo, you're still too childish in thinking about things. Crown Prince and Bing Yi are brothers. They are both members of the royal family. They don't want to see the royal family's face hurt. But if there's a conflict of interest and the interest is big enough, then the brotherhood is not that important. They are both members of the royal family. What kind of conflict of interest could there be? Jean de Bayo still did not understand. Nie Tian understood. Mr. Jean means that Bing Yi is a threat to the Crown Prince's throne. Crown Prince doesn't want Bing Yi to be famous. Is that so? Jin Mingxin nodded and sighed. The royal family's affection is the thinnest, especially between brothers. They all want the throne. If Bing Yi is a mediocre person, then he's the Crown Prince's good brother. But if he is a genius with ambition, then he will be the Crown Prince's biggest enemy. I see. Bing Yi also wants the throne. Crown Prince is afraid that his reputation will be too great and threaten his position. So he wants to use Boss to suppress Bing Yi's fame. Even if De Bayo was stupid, he should have understood now. Lan Binji had said that a ruler must not joke. His ambition had been exposed. Jin Mingxin smiled, relieved that his son wasn't so stupid. Yet Tian smiled faintly and asked, Mr. Jin, do you think I should fight for the Rookie King title or not? Jin Mingxin also smiled and said, The bet between De Bayo and Qin Yuhu looks like a joke between children on the surface. But if you look deeper, it's a contest between the Jin family and the Qin family. If you look deeper, it's actually a contest between the Crown Prince and Prince Binji for the throne. Here, Jin Mingxin sighed. Whether it's the Jin clan or Mr. Nie, we've unintentionally gotten involved in this battle. It's impossible to back out now. I just hope we're not on the wrong side. Dad, which team are we on? Jean de Bayo was actually a bit excited as he asked. Jin Mingxin smiled bitterly. You've made a bet with Qin Yuhu. Do we have a choice? We can only support the Crown Prince. Dad, you want Boss to fight for the Rookie King? De Bayo grinned. He was afraid that Jin Mingxin would stop Nie Tian from fighting for the Rookie King. Fight! Jin Mingxin suddenly stood up. My Jin clan's first grade house cannot be handed over to the Qin clan. Nie Tian nodded and smiled faintly. Unintentionally, getting involved in the battle for the throne wasn't what Nie Tian wanted. But since he was already involved, he wasn't afraid. Nie Tian was a rock that had the power to change the direction of a river. Jin Mingxin suddenly looked at Nie Tian and said, Actually, the Crown Prince wants Mr. Nie to be his master for another reason. What do you mean? Nie Tian asked. Jin Mingxin nodded. The Crown Prince wants Mr. Nie to be his master because he wants to rope in the Alchemist Guild. Rope in the Alchemist Guild? Nie Tian was stunned. Yes. Jin Mingxin nodded and said, Mr. Nie is already Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher, and Zhang Yifeng's position in the Alchemist Guild is very high. The next Alchemist Guild president will most likely be Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng. If the Crown Prince takes Mr. Nie as his master, not only will he receive Mr. Nie's support, but he will also become Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's apprentice brother. Naturally, he will receive the Alchemist Guild support. I have to say, the Crown Prince's move is very good. Unfortunately, Mr. Nie is more powerful and doesn't put in his eyes. Chapter 77. Nie Tian looked at Jin Mingxin and smiled faintly, asking, The Alchemist Guild shouldn't be participating in the fight for the throne, right? Nie Tian knew how terrifying the Alchemist Guild was. He believed that the Alchemist Guild would disdain to interfere in this worldly power struggle. Jin Mingxin nodded. They haven't interfered in the past. I wonder if they will this time. Niet Tian nodded. A strange expression suddenly flashed past his eyes as he asked, Mr. Jean, do you know of the Bloodbat sect? Bloodbat sect? Jean Mingxin was slightly startled. Seeing Niet Tian's strange expression, he asked, Why would Mr. Nye suddenly ask about the Bloodbat sect? Could it be that you have a grudge with this organization? Niet Tian nodded and said in a deep voice, A blood feud that will not end until one party is dead. Since ancient times, the feud of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. The Bloodbat sect killed Niet Tian's father, so Niet Tian must remove the Bloodbat sect from the 3,000 Lesser Worlds. Jean Mingxin swallowed his saliva and said, What grudge does Mr. Nye have with the Bloodbat sect? The Bloodbat sect killed my father. Niet Tian did not avoid the topic and said directly. Jean Mingxin was startled for a moment and said, Since Mr. Nye mentioned the Bloodbat sect, then let me tell you about the current power distribution in the Imperial City. All right. Niet Tian nodded. He also wanted to know the current situation in Blue Cloud City. Jean Mingxin saw that Niet Tian was very interested and nodded. In Blue Cloud Imperial City, the strongest power is naturally the royal family. The royal family controls the Blue Cloud Army, and there's also the Imperial Guard Army in Blue Cloud City. They are extremely powerful and rule over the entire kingdom. However, there are a few other powers that are not under the control of the royal family, and can even contend with the royal family. For example, the Alchemist Guild, Bloodbat Sect, Blue Cloud Commerce, and the Black Market. Bloodbat Sect. Hearing this organization again, Niet Tian's expression changed slightly. The Bloodbat Sect's influence in the Kingdom of Blue Clouds was very strong. It was actually strong enough to contend against the royal family. Jean Mingxin knew that Niet Tian was more interested in the Bloodbat Sect, so he continued, The Bloodbat Sect is an underground martial arts organization, as well as an assassin organization. There are many vicious and evil people gathered in it, and they even raise a large number of assassins. Even the royal family doesn't dare to provoke them. Furthermore, the royal family and the Bloodbat Sect had a close relationship. The current empress, who is also the birth mother of Benji Prince, is said to be the Bloodbat Sect Master's junior sister. Niet Tian nodded slightly. He did not expect that the royal family and the Bloodbat Sect, two seemingly irreconcilable factions, would have such a close relationship. The empress is a member of the Qin family, right? Niet Tian asked. He remembered that Qin Yulong had once said that the empress was his aunt. Yes. Jean Mingxin said, The empress is the younger sister of the Qin family's patriarch, Qin Yetian. It is because of this relationship that Qin Yetian is able to command the Imperial Guard. Niet Tian nodded lightly and asked, What about the other organizations? Jean Mingxin continued, The Alchemist Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce. One controls all the alchemists, while the other controls more than 30% of the Empire's assets. More importantly, the Alchemist Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce are small branches of the Alchemist Guild headquarters and the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce, respectively. They are only the representatives of these two super forces in the Blue Cloud Empire. Therefore, the royal family doesn't dare to offend these two organizations. Furthermore, Jean Mingxin paused, then continued. The Alchemist Guild and the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce are spread throughout the mini-summer world, so the attitude of the Alchemist Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce directly affects the Blue Cloud Emperor's every decision. It is not an exaggeration to say that even when it comes to determining the future heir, the Bloodbat Sect, the Alchemist Guild, and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, these three forces have a certain say. Niet Tian nodded, deeply agreeing. The heir was the future emperor. If this future emperor was rejected by the various forces, his position as emperor would definitely not be stable. Of course, whether it was the Alchemist Guild or the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, they were mutually supportive of the royal family. Under normal circumstances, they would not go against the royal family. Under normal circumstances, the Alchemists Guild and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce symbolically submitted to the royal family. To a certain extent, they accepted the royal family's management. However, when it came to their own interests, the Alchemists Guild, and the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce would definitely not give in. Even the royal family would not dare to forcefully intervene. As for the Bloodbat sect, it was a force that was not under the royal family's control. They only did not interfere with each other. "Dad, aren't you the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce?" Jean de Bayo seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but feel excited. He already knew that Jean Mingxin was the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, but he didn't know that the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce had such a heavy say in the Blue Cloud Empire. The reason why the Jean family was known as the richest family in the Imperial City was not only because they were rich, but more importantly, because Jean Mingxin was the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce. "Stinking brat. You just found out that your dad is so powerful." Jean Mingxin smiled faintly. Nie Tian was also slightly taken aback. Jean Mingxin's identity surprised him quite a bit. According to the distribution of power in the Blue Cloud Empire, there should be 4 giants in the Blue Cloud Empire: the Blue Cloud Emperor, the president of the Alchemists Guild, the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, and a leader of the Bloodbat sect. Who would have thought that the kind-looking Jean Mingxin was actually one of the 4 giants of the Blue Cloud Empire? The Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce was backed by the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce. From this aspect, the Jean family's foundation was even stronger than the royal family. After knowing all these, Nie Tian knew what was going on in his heart. At the same time, in the Bingyi Palace, Lan Binji was holding an exquisite 3-legged wine cup. He took a sip and immediately revealed a comfortable smile. "Your Highness, who are we waiting for?" Qin Yuhu stood at the side and asked respectfully. The two of them had already waited for more than an hour. Qin Yuhu couldn't wait any longer. Lan Binji smiled faintly. His gaze suddenly looked out. His eyes flashed and he said, "She's here." Qin Yuhu turned around. Suddenly, he discovered that a figure had appeared at the door. Like a ghost, it was silent. The person who came was completely shrouded in a black robe. He couldn't see her face clearly. Judging from her figure, she seemed to be a young girl in her teens. "Tang Yuyu, you're finally here." Lan Binji had a smile on his face. He seemed to be very happy. Tang Yuyu, who was shrouded in the black robe, slightly raised his head. He seemed to look at Lan Binji and said in a deep voice, "Lan Binji, a small freshman martial gathering has to trouble the sect master. Should I say that you're trash?" Her voice was very pleasant to listen to. It was also very cold. Furthermore, it revealed a suffocating pressure. "Impudent. Who gave you the guts to actually dare to speak to His Highness like this?" Qin Yuhu roared in anger. It was as if Tang Yuyu was scolding him. "Pa!" In the next moment, a clear slap sounded. Half of Qin Yuhu's face immediately swelled up. "You dare to hit me?" Qin Yuhu was completely confused. He looked at Tang Yuyu, who was under the black robe, in shock. "Trash," Tang Yuyu reprimanded coldly. He then said to Lan Binji, "Don't take in this kind of useless subordinate in the future. Junior sister, you really care too much. This king likes to raise useless dogs. Can't I?" Lan Binji smiled sinisterly. "Useless dogs, even if you raise them, they would only be a waste of dog food." Tang Yu said cold, "I will appear at the martial gathering tomorrow. I will ensure that you will be able to get the newcomer king." Chapter 78. Only when Tang Yuyu's figure completely disappeared did Qin Yuhu slowly walk out of his trembling state. Tang Yuyu gave him a terrifying and oppressive feeling. It was as if breathing in front of this person had become difficult. Qin Yuhu was a manifestation realm martial practitioner, but he didn't see how Tang Yuyu attacked. Without a doubt, Tang Yuyu's strength was far above Qin Yuhu's. Your Highness, who is this person?" Qin Yuhu was still in shock as he asked with a trembling voice. Lan Binji glanced at Qin Yuhu and smiled playfully. "Are you sure you want to ask this question?" Qin Yuhu immediately trembled and said, "This lowly one was wrong. This lowly one spoke too much." Lan Binji chuckled and said, "You aren't too stupid. Remember, some things the less you know, the better. Now scram. This lowly one will take his leave." Qin Yuhu bowed and quickly retreated. No matter who the person was, Qin Yuhu knew that this person was not someone he could afford to offend. However, He was very happy because Tang Yuyu said that he would guarantee that Lan Binji would get the Rookie King. This undoubtedly added another guarantee to the bet. Lan Binji felt much more at ease. With Tang Yuyu's guarantee, he was very confident. Tang Yuyu was none other than the adopted daughter of the Bloodbat sect master. Lan Binji's mother, the Empress, was the junior sister of the Bloodbat sect master, so he called Tang Yuyu junior sister. Lan Binji didn't know much about Tang Yuyu. He only knew that Tang Yuyu was a genius martial practitioner that the Bloodbat sect master brought back from Sumeru's spirit capital 8 years ago. She was only 14 years old now, but she was already the #1 assassin of the Bloodbat sect. Many of the people who had died in her hands were experts whose names shook a region. A 14-year-old female assassin, just thinking about it made people shudder. Lan Binji knew that Tang Yuyu never failed. With her present at the martial gathering tomorrow, there would be no mistakes. The next morning, when Yetian walked out of the room, Jean de Bayo and the others were already waiting outside. "Boss, let's hurry to Tyrant Cloud Academy." Today was the day of the martial gathering. Jean de Bayo was clearly even more excited than Yetian. "Big brother Yetian, I want to go too." Euro carried little Guai out of the room. "Yes." Yetian nodded lightly. He had changed into a new set of clothes today, and his entire person looked like a new man. He was in high spirits and appeared very sharp. All of them didn't delay any longer and immediately headed for Tyrant Cloud Academy. Tyrant Cloud Academy's martial arena. Early in the morning, many people had gathered outside the martial field. They were all 15 or 16-year-old youths, and they were all fighting to be the first to surround a red list. The final results of yesterday's test were posted on the red roll. The top 180 people were qualified to enter Tyrant Cloud Academy and become its new students. They're only recruiting 180 people this year, and I'm ranked 182. What a tragedy. Someone sighed with a depressed expression. "What tragedy are you talking about?" "I'm ranked 181st. F***CK. Last year, they were recruiting 200 people. Why were they only recruiting 180 people this year? The heavens are truly jealous of such a talented person." The other person couldn't help but sigh. He was on the verge of going crazy. He was just one rank away from entering Tyrant Cloud. "Wow, I'm 79th. Xiao Ling was very excited as she stood at the edge of the crowd. "Sister Ling is awesome." Beside Xiao Ling, Nyeyuro was hugging Xiao Guai, looking very cute. "Haha, boss is indeed #1. Jean de Bayo stared at the red roll and laughed proudly. At the top of the red roll was a name, Nye Tian. Qiushan also laughed. Mr. Nye shattered the strength testing steel during the test of strength. He deserves to be #1. "Uncle Qiushan, why did Big Brother Nye Tian get 20 points, and I only get 8? Xiao Ling didn't understand. She pouted, clearly unconvinced. Xiao Ling thought that her talent was already very good, but she only got 8 points. She was a far cry from Nye Tian. Qiushan was also stunned when he saw Nye Tian's score. 20 points. That was the full score. Full score. How is that possible? He could get full score in the test of strength. But how could he get full score in the test of primordial spirit? If he got full score in the primordial spirit test, it meant that his primordial spirit was of the 10th stage. A 10th stage primordial spirit? Did it exist? But when he remembered that the person who tested Nye Tian's primordial spirit was Zhang Yifeng, Qiushan understood. Soon, the others also noticed Nye Tian's full score. This news spread like the wind. After a while, everyone knew that a person had gotten full score in Tyrant Cloud Academy's test of freshmen. This was very amazing. One had to know that in the history of Tyrant Cloud Academy, there had never been a person who got full score. In this way, Nye Tian's limelight was truly unparalleled. Everyone was fighting to discuss Nye Tian's full score, and they even forgot that there was an imperial prince participating in the freshman martial meet this year. "Let's go." Nye Tian didn't want to stay for too long, so he turned and left. The crowd behind him was in a complete uproar. "Look, that guy is Nye Tian, Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher. He got full score in the test. Is this guy a monster?" Yeah, to be able to become Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng's teacher, His alchemy cultivation must be terrifying. Moreover, his martial arts talent is so abnormal. How can anyone live? The most important thing is that he's so young. He's simply a monster. The crowd was in an uproar, pointing and discussing behind Nietian. Coincidentally, just as Nietian and the others left, Lan Binji just happened to appear. Qin Yuhu and Qin Feng followed behind him. Originally, Lan Binji was prepared that his appearance would definitely cause a commotion. After all, a prince participating in the freshman martial meet was unprecedented. However, his appearance was completely ignored by everyone. Everyone's attention was focused on Nietian, and they didn't even notice Lan Binji's arrival. Lan Binji's face was gloomy, and he glared fiercely at Nietian, as if he wanted to kill someone. But Nietian completely ignored all of this. He left directly, completely ignoring Lan Binji's existence. The figures of the few quickly disappeared, but everyone was still looking in the direction they disappeared. From start to end, Nietian didn't say a word, but he took all the limelight. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, not moving away for even a second. Lan Binji looked at the disappearing back view, his handsome face almost trembling, a ball of suppressed anger in his chest, unable to swallow it nor spit it out. Nietian, Nietian, if this prince doesn't kill you, I'm not human. Lan Binji roared in his heart. Cold, he turned around. The limelight was stolen by Nietian. There was no meaning in him staying any longer. The Qin Yuhu and Qin Feng brothers also had expressions of resentment. Originally, Qin Feng also had hopes of competing for the newcomer king, but now he was basically just a side character. Even if he had the confidence to fight with Nietian, he couldn't compete with Prince Binji. But the Qin brothers were still very happy. They firmly believed that even Nietian couldn't possibly be Prince Binji's match. Chapter 79. Nietian and the others entered the martial arena and found a remote location, quietly waiting for the freshman martial gathering to begin. Nietian did not want to be in the limelight. Although the feeling of being the center of attention was not bad, he knew that on the path of martial arts, it was not about being the center of attention. Moreover, he had to continuously move forward. Even if no one was paying attention to him, he had to be firm on his own path, never stopping. Only in this way could he go further. A moment later, important figures appeared in the martial arena one after another. Blue Tyrant Academy's vice principal Fan Jinwu sat on the main seat of the martial arena, his eyes sharp like a quiet lion. For the freshman martial gathering, some of the important forces and figures of Blue Cloud City would also be invited. This time, the person from the Alchemist Association who came to support was none other than Zhang Yifeng. On the royal family's side, the person who appeared this time was the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yetian. Besides being the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yetian had another identity, Qin Yuhu's father. At the same time, he was also Lan Binji's uncle. As for the Blue Cloud Commerce, they did not send anyone. They rarely participated in these matters. Besides the people from the Alchemist Association and the royal family, other large clans, small academies, and small sects also sent people to observe. Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial gathering, without any exaggeration, gathered the most talented youths of Blue Cloud Empire. After the various people arrived, they all took their seats. Zhang Yifeng sat on the lower left side of Fan Jinwu, facing Qin Yetian, who sat on the lower right side. Qin Yetian looked to be around 40 years old, tall and sturdy, with a resolute expression, giving people a very tough feeling. Master Zhang, I heard that you recently acknowledged a teacher. It seems to be a teenager. Is that true? Qin Yetian looked at Zhang Yifeng with a profound gaze. Although his tone was calm, the ridicule in his words was very obvious. Zhang Yifeng's reaction was very cold, indifferently saying, "This is my own matter. It has nothing to do with Commander Qin." Regarding the grudge between Yetian and the Qin clan, as well as the bet between Jin Debao and Qin Yuhu, Zhang Yifeng had also heard of it. But he was very confident in Yetian, and in his heart, he had a faint feeling that acknowledging Yetian as his teacher was very possibly the best decision he had ever made. Qin Yetian laughed loudly and said, "It seems like the rumor is true. Master Zhang really took that stinky brat as his master. This kind of thing is really an eye-opener. Qin Yetian had long heard of Nie Tian's name. Furthermore, Nie Tian had castrated his third son, Qin Yulong, and even injured Qin Yuhu. But since the beginning, Qin Yetian hadn't taken Nie Tian seriously, and he felt that the latter was only an ant. Only after confirming the relationship between Zhang Yifeng and Nie Tian did Qin Yetian truly view Nie Tian as an enemy worthy of his attention. Governor Qin, Zhang Yifeng's eyes suddenly turned cold, and he said coldly, "You insulted my master in front of me. Are you looking down on me?" Qin Yetian was stunned. He did not expect Zhang Yifeng to have such a big reaction. From the looks of it, he was really going to turn hostile. "Master Zhang, don't be angry." Governor Qin did not mean it. Fan Jinwu saw that the situation was not right and quickly persuaded. Qin Yetian's face stiffened, but he still said, "I spoke too quickly. If I have offended you in any way, I hope Master Zhang can be magnanimous enough to forgive me." Zhang Yifeng was a third-ranked alchemist and a young genius. His status in the Alchemist Association was very high. Even Qin Yetian did not dare to offend him. Zhang Yifeng snorted coldly and said, "If Governor Qin speaks rudely again, don't blame this master for turning hostile." After that, Zhang Yifeng no longer cared about Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian and Fan Jinwu exchanged glances but did not dare to say anything. A moment later, Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet officially began. The 180 freshmen were divided into 4 groups. Each group would decide on 2 experts to advance to the finals. Very quickly, Nie Tian received his participation token, the first group. Coincidentally, Qiu Ling was also in the first group, number 30. "Big brother Nie Tian, when the two of us fight later, you have to go easy on me." Qiu Ling held the token and giggled. She was gradually getting familiar with Nie Tian and was no longer as shy as before. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He did not say yes or no. He was determined to become the newcomer king. If he met Qiu Linger, he could go easy on her, but he would never let her win. Preliminary round, first match of Group 1, number 1 versus number 13. On the stage, a gray-robed martial artist announced the first match. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He did not expect that he would be the first to fight. Nie Tian did not hesitate. After greeting the crowd, he strode over and stepped onto the stage. Nie Tian, standing on a raised platform, Fan Jinwu's eyes lit up as soon as he saw Nie Tian, and his expression stiffened. "Oh, Dean Fan, you know Nie Tian too?" Qin Yetian rolled his eyes and asked in surprise. "Mr. Nie is Master Zhang's teacher. He is now a famous person in Blue Cloud City. Who doesn't know him?" Fan Jinwu smiled stiffly. His expression did not change much, but his heart was in turmoil. Fan Jinwu already knew that Xiushan had returned and that Nie Tian and Xiushan had a close relationship. Fan Jinwu was the culprit who had framed Xiushan back then. The two were mortal enemies. Therefore, Fan Jinwu had unknowingly regarded Nie Tian as an enemy as well. "Oh," Qin Yetian nodded slightly, but he did not want to let it go. His eyes flashed, and he smiled. "I heard that your younger brother, Mr. Fan Jinji, once wanted to teach Nie Tian a lesson, but was stopped by Dean Shi. Is that true?" Fan Jinwu's expression stiffened. A murderous glint flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He laughed dryly. "It's just a rumor. Jinji is a man of status. How could he fight with someone else so easily?" "Hee, that's true." Qin Yetian laughed. This commander also thinks that Mr. Fan Jinji's status is extraordinary. He would definitely disdain to attack someone of unknown status. And Fan Jinwu nodded. His gaze turned to Nie Tian, who was on the stage. His chest became more and more stuffy. Zhang Yifeng listened to the conversation between the two, but he did not say anything. When Nie Tian stepped onto the stage, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. They did not expect to see the battle of a famous figure in the first round. They could not help but look forward to it. "Nie Tian, this prince wants to see just what kind of ability you have. You dare to fight with this prince for the newcomer king title. You really don't know how to write the word death." Below the stage, Lan Binji coldly stared at Nye Tian and said in his heart. On the other side, there was also a gaze locked onto Nye Tian. Lan Bingchen was hidden in the crowd, looking at Nye Tian from afar. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said in his heart, Nye Tian, don't disappoint this prince. Anyone can be the newcomer king, but not Lan Binji. Lan Bingchen and Lan Binji, the two brothers, had completely different thoughts at this moment. These two were brothers on the surface, but in reality, they were mortal enemies who had yet to shed all pretense of cordiality. The reason why Lan Bingchen wanted to become Nye Tian's disciple was to borrow Nye Tian's strength. Chapter 80. Nye Tian's first opponent was a yellow-robed youth, around 15 or 16 years old, his cultivation reaching level 4 essence spirit. Looking at his appearance, he was very ordinary. There was some arrogance in his eyes, and also some fear. Clearly, this was a commoner. For a commoner to be able to cultivate to level 4 essence spirit at such a young age, his talent was pretty good. The yellow-robed youth stepped forward, cupping his fists and saying, "This one is Zhao He, please." Nye Tian nodded slightly. Since the other party was being somewhat courteous, he would not be too arrogant either. He said lightly, "Nye Tian, please. Be careful." Zhao He was polite with his words, but his hands were not. With a loud shout, the phantom of an essence spirit appeared behind him. It was actually a golden patterned leopard, its aura sharp and fierce, its speed extremely fast. Like a bolt of yellow lightning, it attacked Nye Tian. Attacking in an instant, seizing the initiative, Zhao He wanted to catch Nye Tian off guard. Nye Tian was currently in the limelight. There was no one in the arena who did not know him. If they could defeat him, they would definitely become famous in one battle. The golden-patterned leopard charged over domineeringly, like a ball of blazing fire, emitting a terrifying aura. With Zhao He's aura, even a level 5 essence spirit expert would not dare to meet force with force after he seized the initiative. Nye Tian stood where he was, his feet not moving an inch. Clenching his fist slightly, he raised his arm and punched out. It looked like an ordinary action, but it erupted with a shocking aura. The sound of something tearing through the air immediately sounded out. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. The golden-patterned leopard's phantom shook violently in the air, actually being scattered by one punch. Arg! The next second, Zhao He let out a miserable cry, his figure flying out, falling off the arena, and landing in a daze. The crowd immediately let out cries of surprise. No one would have thought that the first battle would actually be so clean and tidy. Zhao He crawled up, clutching his chest. Raising his head to look at Nye Tian, there was some additional respect in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks for showing mercy." Although Zhao He had taken the initiative to attack and was a little scheming, he still knew his limits. He knew that Nye Tian had not used his full strength, otherwise he would have definitely died on the spot. Speaking of which, Nye Tian was the same as Zhao He, both at the 4th level essence spirit realm. However, his battle prowess was even stronger than the average 9th level essence spirit realm martial artist. Earlier on, he had already intentionally restrained his strength and didn't use his martial skill, Astral Soul. He had even intentionally controlled his own strength. If not for that, Zhao He would have died without a doubt. Nye Tian didn't say much as he stepped off the martial stage. On the high platform of the martial field, several people's faces were gloomy and uncertain. No one knew what they were thinking. Fan Jinwu was slightly surprised and said in his heart, "This kid can actually defeat an opponent of the same level in one move, and he is even deliberately restraining his strength. This is somewhat strange. It seems that what Jin Ji said was true. This brat can really defeat Qin Yuhu." Originally, Fan Jinwu did not believe that Nye Tian had defeated Qin Yuhu. After all, Qin Yuhu was an all-creation martial artist. How could a 4th level essence spirit martial artist be his match? Therefore, he guessed that this matter was most likely an exaggeration. However, it seemed that he was beginning to believe that Nye Tian had the strength to defeat Qin Yuhu. At this moment, Qin Yetian's expression also changed. There was less ridicule on his face and more seriousness. Nie Tian had already formed enmity with the Qin family and had close ties with the Jin family. Qin Yetian originally thought that Nie Tian was merely a little loach, unable to stir up any big waves. However, from the looks of it now, this little loach was very likely to be a formidable opponent for Lan Binji. Nie Tian, is it? The corners of Qin Yetian's mouth curled up slightly as he laughed coldly in his heart. No matter who you are, if you want to steal the limelight of the imperial family, then you must be prepared to die. Qin Yetian was not only the commander of the imperial guards, he was also Lan Binji's uncle. As a prince, if Lan Binji participated in the martial meet and did not obtain the title of newcomer king, then the imperial family would be slapped in the face. The imperial family's dignity would definitely be damaged because of this. Such a thing absolutely could not happen. The reason why the emperor let Qin Yetian come and watch the Tyrant Cloud freshman martial meet was to ensure that Lan Binji could get the rookie king title. At the critical moment, they could even take special measures. Seeing that Nie Tian's strength was so strange, Zhang Yifeng rejoiced in his heart. He felt even more that acknowledging Nie Tian as his master was a correct decision. On the other side, just as Nie Tian walked down the martial stage, the first battle of the second group similarly came to a conclusion. Die! An explosive roar sounded out. A round thing carrying a trace of blood flew down the martial stage. A skinny youth stood on the martial stage, akin to a block of ice. His entire body emitted a cold aura, making people palpitate. Beneath his feet was a headless corpse. Blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing the martial stage red. This scene swiftly gathered the attention of the entire audience. SC killed someone? Isn't this a competition? Why did he kill someone? This person's strength is too strong. He's at least Origin Spirit level 9 strength. The crowd discussed quietly, looking at the youth on the stage with fear. What a cruel method to actually cut off the opponent's head with one sword. Nie Tian also glanced at the skinny youth. He saw a pair of crimson-red eyes filled with anger. This youth was also looking at Nie Tian. Boss, he's Liang Yunlong. Zhuozhuo reminded Nie Tian in a low voice. Qin Fun, Liang Yunlong, Ling Yun. These three people were specially reminded by Qiu Yin. Liang Yunlong's figure leaped down the martial stage, landing on the ground about 5 meters away from Nie Tian. A pair of vicious eyes stared at Nie Tian. He said coldly, Nie Tian, I'm Liang Yunlong. You're very lucky that you didn't meet me. Otherwise, that headless corpse would be you. Is that so? Nie Tian smiled faintly. It was very strange. He didn't know Liang Yunlong at all. So why did the latter want to kill him? Liang Yunlong nodded solemnly and said coldly, You better pray that you don't meet me, or else I'll definitely kill you with my own hands. Nie Tian glanced at the headless corpse and said indifferently, With just you. Liang Yunlong killed his opponent with one sword and even cut off his head this way. From this, it could be seen that not only was this person strong, his temperament was even more brutal to the extreme. The new martial meet was originally just a normal sparring session. There was completely no need to kill. However, Liang Yunlong killed the moment he made a move. It was enough to see how vicious his methods were. Nie Tian could already see that Liang Yunlong's strength was the same as Qin Fun's, also Origin Spirit level 9. Moreover, his Origin Spirit was the most terrifying sword spirit, battle strength comparable to all creation's martial artists. However, this kind of strength was still not enough to make Nie Tian feel apprehensive, and even more impossible to make him retreat. You will soon pay the price for your arrogance. After Liang Yunlong said this, coldly turned around. Nie Tian's expression was indifferent, not revealing the slightest ripple. Boss, Liang Yunlong is also a young genius of Blue Cloud City. You're currently in the limelight, stealing the limelight of these geniuses. Many people want to use this opportunity to suppress you and raise their own fame, Jean de Bao said to Nie Tian. So that's how it is. Nie Tian could not help smiling bitterly. Looks like there was a saying that was very true. We don't like others being in the limelight because that hinders us from being in the limelight. Liang Yunlong originally wanted to rely on the new martial meat to become famous. He did not expect that first there was a Lan Binji, followed by Nye Tian. The appearance of these two people directly made his name disappear. Liang Yunlong did not dare to make things difficult for Lan Binji. He could only vent the anger in his heart on Nye Tian. However, how could Nye Tian be the kind of person who would casually let others vent their anger? The commotion caused by Liang Yunlong did not subside for a long time. The crowd kept discussing in low voices, especially the conversation between Nye Tian and Liang Yunlong. It made everyone unable to help but have special anticipation, hoping to see the moment when the two people faced off. The new martial meat this time was destined to be a reign of terror. But Nye Tian did not care too much. No matter who the opponent was, he was determined to become the new king. Chapter 81. The tournament continued. Nye Tian carefully observed each and every match that followed. However, he didn't find anyone worthy of his attention. Preliminaries, Group 1, Match 16. Number 17 versus number 30. The gray-robed cultivator announced on the arena. Number 30, it's me. Xiaoling reacted. She was not nervous at all, but excited. Xiaoshan, on the other hand, was very nervous. Miss Linger, don't force yourself. If you can fight, then fight. If you can't, then admit defeat. I understand, Uncle Xiaoshan. Xiaoling nodded. I believe Sister Ling will win, Nye Yuro said seriously, looking up at Xiaoling with Xiao Guai in her arms. Xiaoling nodded and walked out. Miss Ling is very strong. As long as her opponent is not a level 9 origin spirit cultivator, she can fight, Nye Tian said, looking at Xiaoling's back. Nye Tian had already sensed that Xiaoling was a level 3 origin spirit cultivator, but her origin spirit was a sword spirit, and a very strong one at that. Nye Tian estimated that Xiaoling's origin spirit talent was around level 5. A sword spirit was not a strength type origin spirit. The fact that Xiaoling could pass the strength test with level 3 origin spirit showed that her origin spirit talent was not bad. Xiaoshan nodded. He was much more at ease with Nye Tian's words. However, when Xiaoshan saw Xiaoling's opponent on the arena, his face froze. Qin Fun. Xiaoshan's eyes widened. He had not expected Xiaoling to be so unlucky that her first opponent would be Qin Fun. Qin Fun was a level 9 origin spirit cultivator and a seated disciple of the newcomer king. Xiaoling was no match for him. Miss Linger, come down. Don't fight anymore. Just admit defeat. Xiaoshan stepped forward and shouted. Xiaoling looked back and smiled. Uncle Xiaoshan, it's fine. Trust me. Xiaoling was very confident in herself. She did not seem to be afraid of Qin Fun. Qin Fun had already seen Xiaoling with Nye Tian, Jean DeBeo, and the others. He already had an idea. He sneered and said, Uncle, she's the one competing, not you. Why do you care so much? Whatever I want to do, it's none of your business. Xiaoshan panicked when he saw Qin Feng's sinister look. He suddenly jumped onto the stage and grabbed Xiaoling. Linga, listen to me. We admit defeat. Uncle Xiaoshan, I won't give up. Xiaoling was stubborn. Do you want to admit defeat? At this time, the gray-robed martial artist of Tyrant Cloud Academy spoke. He suddenly took a step forward and slightly leaned his body to the side. A vigorous force was flung out and directly knocked Xiaoshan off the martial arts arena. Xiaoshan fell from the stage and almost fell. Fortunately, he was supported by Nye Tian. The gray-robed martial artist stared at Xiaoshan coldly and reprimanded. You are not a participant, so you do not have the qualifications to step onto the stage. Since it's your first offense, I'll let you off. If you dare to step onto the stage again, don't blame me for being merciless. Little brother, thank you for your mercy. Xiaoshan was not injured, so the black-robed martial artist was not ruthless. The gray-robed martial artist said coldly, You must admit defeat from the stage. She has already stepped onto the stage. It's too late to admit defeat. Alas, Xiaoshan could not help but sigh, knowing that there was no turning back. Xiaoling knew that Xiaoshan was worried about her, but she was not nervous. Instead, she said confidently, Uncle Chio Shan, don't worry. I'll be fine. Jean de Bao saw the hostility in Qin Feng's eyes and said, Qin Feng, you'd better not hurt Ling or I will not let you off. Really? Qin Feng sneered with disdain and provoked. I'd like to know how young Master Jean will not let me off. Fatty, shut up. I haven't lost yet. Qiu Linger rolled her eyes at Jean de Bao and looked unconvinced. Jean de Bao still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Nie Tian. Nie Tian said, Don't affect her mentality. She's confident, so she must have something to rely on. We just have to believe in her. In a battle between martial artists, mentality was also very important apart from strength. If one was scared before the battle, one would definitely lose even if one was stronger than the opponent. Nie Tian could tell that Xiao Ling was a very intelligent girl. Although she was a little stubborn, she was not the kind of person who would foolishly cause trouble. Since she dared to step onto the stage, she must have something to rely on. Are you done with your bullshit? I'm going to make my move. Qin Feng smiled coldly and was ready to attack. Jean de Bao and Xiao Shan were worried, but there was nothing they could do. They could only take a step back and watch the stage nervously. Because Qin Feng had stepped onto the stage, many people were watching the battle. Xiao Ling looked at Qin Feng, and her pretty face gradually turned cold, revealing a terrifying calmness. Qin Feng smiled disdainfully and said, Little sister, don't worry. I'm a man who has tender feelings for the fair sex. I won't kill you. I'll only destroy your key meridians. Oomph. Qiu Ling raised her snow-white chin and said stubbornly, Do you have that ability? Clang. She raised her arm, and a long and thin sword appeared behind her. It was sharp and agile like a small snake, unusually agile. The spirit snake illusory sword was Qiu Ling's primordial spirit. Spirit snake comes out its hole. Qiu Ling knew that Qin Feng was very strong, so her first move was not a direct attack, but a probing move. The spirit snake illusory sword drew a sword flower in the air. The sword curved a few times, and a shadow surged out. Qin Feng stood firmly on the spot, not moving at all. His eyes were fixed on the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit behind Qiu Ling. Just as the illusory sword was about to hit Qin Feng, a powerful force suddenly surged out from behind him. With just a slight movement, the illusory sword's primordial spirit immediately shattered. The spirit snake illusory sword seemed to be provoked, and it shrank back. Qin Feng was a rank 9 origin spirit cultivator, but Xiao Ling was only a rank 4 origin spirit cultivator. There was too much of a difference in their strength. Moreover, Qin Feng's primordial spirit of the sky, He Jim and Hammer, was no weaker than the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit. Therefore, Qiu Ling was no match for him in a head-on fight. Nie Tian nodded lightly below the stage. He thought to himself, the advantage of the spirit snake illusory sword's primordial spirit lies in its agility. If Qiu Ling can display this intelligence, there might be a surprise. Of course, Nie Tian knew that no matter how agile Qiu Ling was, she was no match for Qin Feng. However, if she could display her agility perfectly, she would at least be able to protect herself. After repelling Qiu Ling with a single move, Qin Feng mocked, Little girl, is that all you've got? Then I'm going to make a move. Do you think it's your turn to make a move? Qiu Ling shouted. She put her palms together and charged forward. The spirit snake illusory sword spun in the air, and primordial spirit surged out from the tip of the sword and attacked Qin Feng. Dancing snake wave. Qiu Ling attacked again. She did not hold back anymore. The spirit snake illusory sword was swift and agile, and it stabbed out in the air. As soon as the sword moved, 7 sword shadows appeared and attacked Qin Feng at the same time. Is that all? Qin Feng smiled cold, and the primordial spirit of the sky dominating hammer struck out. Just then, something strange happened. The 7 sword shadows suddenly spun in the air and turned into 49 shadows. Chapter 82. Qin Feng was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Anger flashed across his face. The primordial spirit of the sky, Tyrant Hammer, surged with a terrifying aura and struck the water screen in front of him. Sky Tyrant Strike. The primordial spirit of the sky, Tyrant Hammer, struck the center of the water screen. All of Qiu Er's sword techniques crumbled. Qiu seemed to have expected this. With a light tap of her foot, she landed on the arena. She smiled at Qin Feng and said, "You win. Stupid girl, you." Qin Feng glared at Qiu feeling suffocated. He had been forced to use the Sky Tyrant Strike by a level 3 Origin Spirit Cultivator, but he had failed to kill his opponent. His opponent had even dodged it easily. Qiu was playing him. This made Qin Feng feel a sense of humiliation. But Qiu had already left the arena. Qin Feng could not attack again, no matter how angry he was. "Miss Linger, are you all right?" Qiu Shan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Qiu land on the arena. "Uncle Qiu Shan, I'm fine." Qiu smiled cutely and looked at Jean de Bao. "Fatty, how strong am I? Can I protect you?" Jean de Bao chuckled and said loudly, "Little sister Ling is too powerful. You're a heroine, a dragon among men. You played someone like a monkey. Jean de Bao, I've decided to follow little sister Ling from now on." "Fatty Jean, you call me a monkey?" Qin Feng glared at Jean de Bao. Jean de Bao glanced at Qin Feng and said innocently, "I was talking about someone. You like to think that way. I can't do anything about it." Qin Feng clenched his fists and his body trembled. The crowd below the stage roared with laughter, making Qin Feng even more ashamed. Nie Tian looked at Qiu and thought, "Qiu is indeed very intelligent. That snake dance was very agile. It's a pity that Qin Feng is too strong. If he was at the same level as Qiu the outcome of this battle would be uncertain." It had to be said that Qiu performance had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. He could see that Qiu could protect herself, but it wasn't easy for her to force Qin Feng to use such a vicious move. Moreover, this girl knew when to advance and when to retreat, which was very rare. Qiu performance also attracted the attention of Fan Jinwu and the others on the high platform. They also did not think that a puny little 3rd-level Origin Spirit martial artist could actually toy around with a 9th-level Origin Spirit Strength Qin Feng. Next, the martial gathering continued. The opponents that Nie Tian encountered were all martial artists below 9th-level Origin Spirit Realm. These opponents, regardless of their strength, were all blasted off the fighting ring by Nie Tian with a single punch. Nie Tian is so strong. His opponents were all defeated in one move, and his feet never moved a single step. It's too scary. Someone in the crowd realized that once Nie Tian stepped onto the stage, he would not move again until his opponent was defeated. It's not that he's too strong, it's that his opponent is too weak. If he were to encounter a powerhouse like Qin Feng, the outcome of the battle might not be certain. Although Nie Tian and Qin Feng were in the same group, they had never met. This should have been specially arranged by the Blue Tyrant Academy. Each group would have 2 victors. If they let Nie Tian and Qin Feng meet prematurely, the subsequent top 8 battles would have much less to look at. The first group was the first to end the preliminaries. The final 2 victors were Nie Tian and Qin Feng. Nie Tian, count yourself lucky that you didn't meet this young master. But in the finals, your luck won't be so good. Qin Feng stepped off the stage and looked at Nie Tian as he said provocatively. Nie Tian shot a calm glance at the other party and said indifferently, "The lucky one is you." Although Qin Feng was strong, it was not enough to make Nie Tian apprehensive. If he met him prematurely, even without using Star Souls, Nie Tian also had full confidence in defeating him. We'll wait and see." With a cold laugh, Qin Feng turned and left. The other 3 groups had their results one after another. The second group's Liang Yunlong was domineering all the way, attacking brutally. Those who fought with him either directly admitted defeat or died on the stage. Advancing together with Liang Yunlong was a youth called Zhang Wan, 8th-level Origin Spirit Strength. The third group was the group that Lan Binji was in. Lan Binji practically did not make a move. His opponents all admitted defeat. Even if there were people who were unconvinced and wanted to fight, they were all instantly defeated by Lan Binji in one move. From start to end, Lan Binji never used his primordial spirit. Sun Yatian still did not know what his primordial spirit was. The other student in the third group who advanced was a young lady, Su Haojia, 8th level origin spirit strength. The two people in the fourth group who advanced were Ling Tian and Yu Feiyang. Ling Tian was the same as Qin Feng and Liang Yunlong, both 9th level origin spirit strength. But Nye Tian could sense that Ling Tian's strength seemed to be stronger than Qin Feng and Liang Yunlong. Ling Tian was born a commoner. He was only 15 years old and already had 9th level origin spirit strength. It was sufficient to show the height of this person's martial talent. Rich kids like Lan Binji, Qin Feng, and Liang Yunlong had eaten God knows how many spirit pills and expended countless essence crystals since they were young. Adding on that their talent was not bad, it was very normal for them to have some strength. But Ling Tian was born a commoner and was extremely lacking in cultivation resources. To be able to have 9th level origin spirit strength, he relied on his outstanding talent. Among the top 8, apart from Lan Binji, the one Nye Tian did not want to encounter the most was Ling Tian. The final top 8 names were officially determined. Nye Tian, Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, Zhang Wan, Lan Binji, Su Haojia, Ling Tian, Yu Feiyang. Among the top 8, Nye Tian was 4th level origin spirit strength. Zhang Wan, Su Haojia, and Yu Feiyang were 8th level origin spirit. Qin Feng, Liang Yunlong, and Ling Tian were 9th level origin spirit. Lan Binji was 1st level Wanxiang. At this moment, the crowd started discussing softly. Although most people knew that the newcomer king was none other than Lan Binji, the strength of Nye Tian, Ling Tian, and the rest were not weak either. They absolutely would not admit defeat directly. This was especially true for Nye Tian. With the bet between Qin Yuhu and Jean de Bayo, it was even more impossible for him to admit defeat. It was extremely likely that he would give it his all. Nye Tian's appearance made the battles of the top 8 even more interesting to watch. On the high platform, Fan Jinwu, Qin Yetian, Zhang Yifeng, and the rest also had bright eyes, each deep in thought. Vice President Fan, in your opinion, who is the most likely to take the title of newcomer king among the top 8? Qin Yetian finally could not help but ask, his gaze lingering on Nye Tian, intentionally or otherwise. He kept having the feeling that Nye Tian would be the biggest surprise in the battles of the top 8. Commander Qin, you already know the answer to this question in your heart. Why ask me? Fan Jinwu chuckled, but still said, Prince Binji is the only Wanxiang martial practitioner among the top 8. Although Nye Tian, Ling Tian, and the rest have some strength, the gap between the origin spirit realm and the Wanxiang realm is too great. It is not something they can overcome. Therefore, I predict that the newcomer king will be none other than Prince Binji. Qin Yetian got the answer he wanted, smiled faintly, and said, Prince Binji is only 14 years old, but he's already a Wanxiang martial practitioner. His martial talent is indeed shocking. At this time, Zhang Yifeng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly laughed coldly and said, Are you two really that confident in Prince Binji? I don't think so. Zhang Yifeng seemed to be answering his own question. How could he not understand? If Qin Yetian was truly confident in Lan Binji, why would he bother asking Fan Jinwu? Oh, Qin Yetian let out a surprised sound and said, Does Master Zhang have a different opinion? Chapter 83. Hearing Zhang Yifeng's words, Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian looked at each other, seemingly deep in thought. Although they hated Nye Tian to the core, Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian couldn't ignore Nye Tian's terrifying strength. Qin Yetian's son, Qin Yuhu, had once been defeated by Nye Tian, and Qin Yuhu was at the first tier of the All-Adept realm. Although his battle prowess was slightly weaker than Lan Binji's, it wasn't by much. Therefore, Qin Yetian really didn't know what to do. He couldn't guarantee that nothing unexpected would happen in this newcomer king battle. Nye Tian, you better lose to Prince Binji. Otherwise, you'll be forcing me to make a move, Qin Yetian said viciously as he looked at Nyetian from afar. If something unexpected happened in the battle between Nyetian and Lan Binji, Qin Yetian would definitely make a move. Soon, the arena quieted down. A gray-robed figure leaped onto the largest arena. The battle for the top 8 would be held on the largest arena. The gray-robed figure's body shook, and an enormous aura enveloped the surrounding tens of meters. My name is AI Onmin. I'll be the judge for the upcoming battle. AI Onmin's gaze swept across the arena, and the entire arena felt a faint pressure. What a powerful aura! This person's strength is actually the 9th tier of the All-Adept realm. Nyetian looked at AI Onmin and exclaimed inwardly. Tyrant Cloud Academy really did have some foundation. Even a judge was at the 9th tier of the All-Adept realm. After intimidating the crowd, AI Onmin announced in a loud voice, "First battle, Nyetian versus Liang Yunlong." Hearing his opponent, Nyetian lifted his head slightly and looked in Liang Yunlong's direction. At the same time, Liang Yunlong turned around, his gaze locked onto Nyetian. The two of them did not say anything, but the anger between them was completely revealed. This battle wasn't a sparring match, but a battle to the death. Jean de Bayo stood next to Nyetian and reminded him, "Boss, Liang Yunlong is vicious and merciless. You mustn't show him any mercy. You mustn't be soft-hearted." Nyetian had displayed terrifying strength in the martial meet, but he did not kill and did not even injure his opponent. Jean de Bayo was afraid that he would be too lenient and suffer a loss against Liang Yunlong. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," Nyetian replied with a calm expression as he slowly stepped onto the arena. He was not a cruel and bloodthirsty person, but he was definitely not a soft-hearted and weak person. There was no need for him to kill others, but against Liang Yunlong, he would show no mercy. Liang Yunlong was a cruel and ruthless person. He was not a kind person. Leaving such a person alive would be a disaster. At this moment, Liang Yunlong also stepped onto the martial arena and faced Nyetian head-on. The duel between the two attracted the attention of everyone present. Xiaoling looked at Nyetian with worry on her delicate face. She murmured softly, "Will Big Brother Nyetian be a match for this guy? There should be no problem, unless Liang Yunlong is even more terrifying than an all-creation martial artist." Xiaoshan nodded. "I believe that Big Brother Nyetian will definitely win." Nie Yuro had full confidence in Nyetian. In her heart, there was no one that Nyetian could not defeat. Little Guai opened its eyes at this moment and let out a strange cry, as if responding to Nie Yuro. And its voice was actually 70% human. Little Guai cried out once and went back to sleep, so no one paid any attention. On the other side, Lan Binji also focused his gaze on the martial arena. He thought to himself, "Liang Yunlong is very strong. It's a good opportunity to test out Nyetian's depth. This prince wants to see how a trash at the 4th level of the Origin Spirit Realm can compete with this prince for the newcomer king. Nyetian, since you are the teacher that Zhang Yifeng has acknowledged, you should bring this prince a surprise." At the same time, Lan Bingxian also looked at Nyetian from afar with a complicated expression. Although he had heard of Nyetian's deeds, Lan Bingxian still could not be at ease without seeing his true strength. And the opponents that Nyetian had met before were all not worth mentioning. They could not be compared to Liang Yunlong at all. After all, Liang Yunlong was a 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm martial artist. He was vicious and very ferocious. "Nyetian, you finally arrived." Liang Yunlong's expression was frighteningly gloomy, his killing intent surging. "You really want to kill me?" Nyetian frowned slightly. Liang Yunlong smiled savagely and said coldly, "Not really, but I really want to torture you to death." He purposely emphasized the word torture so that it could stimulate his fighting spirit even more. "Then let's do it." Not wanting to waste any more words, Nyetian's energy meridians started to circulate. Liang Yunlong was even more impatient. A black heavy sword appeared behind him. The sword was surrounded by a turbid black aura, emitting a heart-palpitating aura. The Black Dragon Sword was Liang Yunlong's primordial spirit. Previously, he used the Black Dragon Sword primordial spirit to torture and kill quite a few opponents. Black Dragon Furious Roar. Liang Yunlong mustered up all the energy in his body. The aura of his entire body surged as he suddenly erupted with a furious roar. The next instant, his body leaned forward and stomped down fiercely. A deep pit was actually stomped out on the arena. A howl erupted from the Black Dragon Sword's blade. Shortly after, it emitted a strange dark light. A black dragon shadow gushed out. Black Dragon Furious Sword. Seeing this scene, Fan Jinwu's expression changed slightly. Black Dragon Furious Sword. This was the Liang family's high-grade yellow-tier martial technique. Looking at Liang Yunlong's aura, he had clearly already cultivated the Black Dragon Furious Sword to the peak level. The levels of martial artists cultivating martial techniques were entry, minor success, major success, peak. Normally speaking, entry in a month, minor success in a year, major success in 3 years, and peak in 10 years. But there were also differences in martial technique levels and martial talent. Liang Yunlong was only 15 or 16 years old. It was clearly impossible for him to cultivate the Black Dragon Furious Sword for 10 years. At most, it was just a few years. To be able to cultivate the Black Dragon Furious Sword to the peak level, it was enough to show that his martial talent far surpassed ordinary people. Nie Tian stood on the spot, feeling Liang Yunlong's aura. His expression was terrifyingly calm. Suddenly, all the energy meridians in his body began to circulate, including the 10th energy meridian formed from the origin star stone. Every inch of his muscles and every piece of his bones was filled with terrifying energy. The 9 extremities war god art circulated rapidly. A faint golden glow emitted from Nie Tian's body, making him look like an enraged wild beast. Kill! Nie Tian roared and punched out with the divine war emperor fist. In the next instant, Nie Tian stomped on the ground and charged forward like a bolt of lightning, not using his energy to attack. Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene. None of them had expected that Nie Tian would launch such a direct attack without using his soul power. Not to mention, he even charged at him head-on. This was an extremely dangerous move. A martial artist who used their energy and didn't use their energy were on completely different levels. Nie Tian naturally knew this. The reason why he dared to do this was because he had absolute confidence in himself. Moreover, his energy did not have much combat power, at least not now. Boom! The Black Dragon shadow collided with Nie Tian and shattered. Bang! Then a muffled sound rang out. Nie Tian's fist landed on Liang Yunlong's chest, and the sound of bones cracking echoed in the air. Liang Yunlong flew backward and crashed heavily below the arena. Chapter 84. Unable to withstand a single blow. It wasn't until Nie Tian's voice rang out that everyone reacted. The battle between Liang Yunlong and Nie Tian was originally a highly anticipated battle. However, no one expected that the battle would end in just one move. Both of them were too ruthless. They fought head-on without any leeway. Liang Yunlong's Black Dragon Roar was an all-out attack. His frontal attack definitely exceeded 15,000 Jin. On the other hand, Nie Tian directly used his body to resist. He didn't even use his primordial spirit and actually blasted Liang Yunlong off the stage. All of this was too strange. After all, there was an entire 5 small realms between the two of them. No one knew how Nie Tian had done it. Only a few of the more powerful people on the platform had figured out what had happened. Fan Jinwu had an astonished look as he said, "The Liang family's boy has 9th level origin spirit strength and also cultivated the Black Dragon Furious Sword to the pinnacle level. He's still unable to block the power of Nie Tian's one punch. Could it be that his fist is even more terrifying than the sword spirit? This kid's body is a little strange." Qin Yetian recovered from a shock and said with a trembling voice. Only Zhang Yifeng stared blankly at Nie Tian, unable to react. At this time, Zhang Yifeng suddenly realized that acknowledging Nie Tian as his master was simply too wise. From this moment on, Zhang Yifeng firmly believed that Nye Tian was his teacher. Seeing that Kashochin was still in a daze, Qin Yetian wanted to say something, but decided against it. After all, Zhang Yifeng was on Yetian's side. Fan Jinwu calmed down and guessed, "This brat is indeed a little strange. If I am not wrong, he should be cultivating a high-grade martial technique. That was why his body was so strong. Moreover, the martial skill he used in that punch just now was also very strange. It seemed to be a very high-level martial skill. At the very least, it's above profound rank. It might even be an earth rank martial skill." Fan Jinwu's guess was right. The reason why Nye Tian was able to heavily injure Liang Yunlong with a single punch was not only because of his powerful physical strength, but also because of the 9 Extremities War God Art and the War God Imperial Fist. Earth-ranked martial technique. Qin Yetian was astonished. Martial arts techniques were divided into 4 ranks: Heaven, Earth, Mysterious, and Yellow. An Earth-ranked martial technique was not a high rank. But in the Blue Cloud Empire, Earth-rank martial techniques were heaven-defying. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, the highest martial technique was only at the mid-level of the profound rank. As for the Earth-ranked martial arts above the profound ranked, only the large sects and clans of first-rate empires could possess them. As for Nye Tian, he was just a country bumpkin who came from a poor mountain valley. Where did he get an Earth-rank martial technique from? Could it be that there's some force behind him? A layer of bewilderment appeared in Qin Yetian's heart, and his expression couldn't help but turn gloomy when he thought of the matter of Zhang Yifeng taking Nye Tian as his master. He intentionally or unintentionally looked at Zhang Yifeng as he wanted to find a trace of clues from the latter's face. Fan Jinwu also thought of this possibility and looked at Zhang Yifeng suspiciously. Zhang Yifeng's lips curled into a smile. His expression was calm, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. At this time, Nye Tian walked down the stage and arrived beside Liang Yunlong. Liang Yunlong, who was lying on the ground, had his chest caved in. His injuries were severe, and it seemed like he would die at any moment. However, his eyes were staring at Nye Tian from beginning to end, and they were extremely vicious and unwilling. "Yeah." Liang Yunlong opened his mouth slightly. His breathing was weak, but one of his hands was shakily stretched out. Just as Liang Yunlong opened his palm, Nye Tian suddenly smelled a familiar scent. He frowned slightly and raised his arm. A formless energy swept past, and a spirit pill landed in his hand. Explosive Yuan pill. Looking at the spirit pill in his hand, Nye Tian's heart sank slightly. The spirit pill that he snatched from Liang Yunlong's hand was the explosive Yuan pill. Judging from the aura, it seemed to be a rank 3 explosive Yuan pill. Explosive Yuan pill, Nye Tian couldn't be more familiar with it. The first spirit pill that he refined in this life was the explosive Yuan pill. Explosive Yuan pill was divided into different ranks, and the one in Nye Tian's hand was a rank 3 explosive Yuan pill. Its medicinal power was several times stronger than the rank 2 explosive Yuan pill that Nye Tian refined previously. If the rank 3 explosive Yuan pill was used on Liang Yunlong, it would definitely allow his strength to instantly reach the manifestation realm. This was definitely prepared by Liang Yunlong in advance, just in case. Luckily, Nye Tian was ruthless enough. With one move, Liang Yunlong didn't even have the chance to use the explosive Yuan pill. Liang Yunlong's expression was in pain. He stretched out his hand and wanted to snatch the explosive Yuan pill back. One had to admit that this person's desire for victory was very strong. In this kind of situation, he still wanted to use the explosive Yuan pill. Nye Tian didn't even look at him and said coldly, "Your explosive Yuan pill, I will accept it." The spectators were stunned for a moment, but no one dared to stand out and object. Even the judge on the stage, AI on Mean, only frowned slightly and didn't interfere. At this moment, 2 young family martial artists appeared and lifted Liang Yunlong up. They didn't dare to ask for the explosive Yuan pill from Nye Tian. Looking at Liang Yunlong being carried away, Nye Tian felt a little regretful. This time, he didn't kill Liang Yunlong. In the future, he would have another troublesome enemy. Although Liang Yunlong's injuries were severe, his strength wasn't bad. If he consumed spiritual pills, it wouldn't take long for him to recover. After the Liang family left, Qiu Shan and the rest came over. "Boss, you're too awesome." Jean de Bayo swallowed his saliva, his face full of shock. "I already knew that Big Brother Nye Tian would win," Nye Yuro said proudly. Qiu Shan, Qiu Ling and the rest looked at Nye Tian in a daze. They didn't expect Nye Tian to defeat Liang Yunlong in a single move. Nye Tian smiled faintly and kept the explosive Yuan pill. After defeating Liang Yunlong, his biggest reward was the explosive Yuan pill. With the explosive Yuan pill, he had another trump card. From afar, Lan Binji looked at Nye Tian, his face so dark that it looked like it was about to drip blood. Lan Bingshun, on the other hand, was very happy. He thought to himself, "Nye Tian, you really didn't let me down." Then, the battle of the top 8 continued. Second match, Prince Binji, battle, Zhang Wan. AI Anmin looked at the crowd, and when everyone quieted down, he announced loudly. Lan Binji stepped onto the stage. He was obviously impatient. Ever since he joined the freshman martial gathering, all the opponents he met either admitted defeat or couldn't even withstand a single blow, not giving Lan Binji a chance to fight. Now that he was facing Zhang Wan, he wanted to amaze everyone. Zhang Wan stood below the stage, raised his head and looked at Lan Binji, cupped his hands and said, "Prince Binji, I admit, no." Before he could say the word admit defeat, Lan Binji's face turned cold and interrupted Zhang Wan. Zhang Wan wanted to directly admit defeat, but unfortunately, Lan Binji didn't allow him to do so. Zhang Wan looked at AI Anmin helplessly. How can there be such a shameless person who doesn't allow people to admit defeat? AI Anmin turned his head, as if he didn't hear Lan Binji's words at all. Lan Binji took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Zhang Wan, listen carefully. I won't allow you to admit defeat." Lan Binji's voice was very low, but those who were close to him could still hear it clearly. Nye Tian's mental power was strong, and he heard it as well. He couldn't help but frown. Lan Binji is too domineering to actually not allow others to admit defeat. Chapter 85. Zhang Wan, you are unlucky. You will be the first sacrifice on my road to becoming the newcomer king. Lan Binji glanced at Zhang Wan and made up his mind. He would kill Zhang Wan in the most shocking way possible. He had forced Zhang Wan onto the stage so he could kill him. Nye Tian had taken all the limelight in the freshman martial gathering. Even though Lan Binji was a prince, he did not receive much attention. He needed to be the center of attention. He had to let everyone know of his existence. He had to create a sensation. Zhang Wan was going to be a poor sacrifice for him. Your Highness, Zhang Wan suddenly felt the murderous intent in Lan Binji's eyes. His heart jumped, and he quickly spoke. But before he could finish, he heard Lan Binji yell, "Too late." As he shouted, a ball of turbid liquid appeared behind Lan Binji. It was cold, and it emitted a freezing aura. The temperature around suddenly dropped by dozens of degrees, and it suddenly became bone-chilling. Black water freeze. Lan Binji screamed, and the turbid liquid behind him gushed out, blasting toward Zhang Wan. Zhang Wan wanted to react, but it was too late. The turbid liquid swept past, and Zhang Wan's entire body was covered in a thin layer of ice crystals. He was frozen, and his entire body became an ice sculpture. His face was still in shock. Die. Lan Binji suddenly took a step forward and kicked Zhang Quan's abdomen. Pang! Zhang Wan flew out, and he shattered into countless pieces of ice in the air. When he landed, he turned into ice. Until he died, Zhang Wan's entire body was frozen solid. Even his blood was frozen. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and no one could react. By the time everyone was able to react, Zhang Quan had already turned into a pile of ice. It was too weird. Everyone looked at the ice on the ground, and their eyes were filled with fear. Boss, what is going on? After a while, Jean de Bayo reacted and asked. Nye Tian looked at Lan Binji and said, His spirit is a spirit, and it seems to have the ability to freeze. Zhang Wan only has the power of the 8th tier, of origin spirit. In front of him, there is no chance of survival. Spirit, Jean de Bayo screamed. He did not expect Lan Binji's spirit to be a spirit. For martial artist's origin spirit, the three most traditional types were the beast spirit, wood spirit, and weapon spirit. Aside from these three, there were also spirits, dead spirits, ghosts, and other extremely rare original spirits. Nietion's spirit was the Chaos original coffin and the Star Soul cannon. It was a spirit too. Otherworldly spiritual warriors were extremely rare. Once they matured, they would be extremely terrifying. Take the current Lan Binji, for example. Although he was only at the first tier of the Wanxiang level, his true battle prowess was comparable to that of a fourth-tier Wanxiang martial artist. Nietion was right. Lan Binji's spirit was a spirit, Blackwater mystic ice. The Blackwater mysterious ice elemental spirit's normal state was a ball of turbid liquid. Once it was infused with elemental energy, it could turn into ice or mist, which was very strange. When the crowd heard Nietion's words, there was an uproar. Spirit. Ice Knight Prince's spirit is a spirit? That's scary. This year's rookie king is none other than Prince Binji. Prince Binji is very strong, but to kill people in such a manner is too cruel. Zhang Wan was forced into the arena by Prince Binji. Prince Binji is too arrogant. He doesn't have the demeanor of a prince. Everyone admitted that Prince Binji's strength was terrifying, but they were very dissatisfied with his actions. Hearing these discussions, Lan Binji was not angry. Instead, he was very pleased. To him, strength was the most important thing. Reputation and reputation were all bullsh**. But Lan Bingshun, who was hidden in the crowd, was very happy. He laughed to himself. My dear little brother, continue to be arrogant. One day, you will learn that reputation is very important. Who would want a homicidal maniac to be the king? The more arrogant Lan Binji was, the happier Lan Bingshun was. He was a few years older than Lan Binji and understood some things better. To be an emperor, one needed more than just strength. More importantly, one needed the support of various factions. Based on Lan Binji's behavior today, the Alchemist Guild, as well as the other sects and clans, would definitely be very disgusted. How could they be at ease letting a homicidal maniac become a king? On the viewing platform, Fan Jinwu's expression was slightly ugly. Looking at Qin Yetian, he said, Commander Qin, this old man admits that Prince Binji's strength and talent are very strong. But this action of his is not appropriate. Fan Jinwu had seen all of Lan Binji's actions, including him forcing Zhang Wan onto the arena. However, out of respect for the imperial family, he could only turn a blind eye to it. What he did not expect was that Lan Binji actually killed Zhang Wan, and in such a cruel manner. This was something he could not accept. Commander Qin, Prince Binji has angered the masses. I'm afraid it will not be good for the royal family. Zhang Yifeng said. Qin Yetian's expression was a little awkward. You two are right. His Highness Binji's actions are indeed ungraceful. When this one returns, I will definitely report this to His Majesty the Emperor and request for His Majesty to discipline Prince Binji. Actually, even without Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng's words, Qin Yetian knew that Lan Binji's actions were stupid. This was simply smearing the royal family's face. Although the royal family did not care about the lives of these commoners, they still had to go through the motions. A prince had forced someone onto the arena and killed him in such a cruel manner. If this matter were to spread, the royal family's reputation would be greatly damaged. Binji, you are still too young. Even if you are angry, you should not choose to vent your anger in such a manner. Qin Yetian sighed. After all, Lan Binji was his nephew. He naturally hoped that Lan Binji would be the future emperor. This would be very beneficial to the Qin family. But Lan Binji did not care about this. He strode down the arena and walked in the direction of Nietion. When he was a few meters away from Nietion, he stopped and said cold, Nietion, you better be prepared to die for trying to snatch the rookie king from me. With that, Lan Binji laughed and turned to leave. From start to finish, Nietion did not say a word. He only looked at Lan Binji as if he was an idiot. In Nietion's eyes, Lan Binji was a complete idiot. As a prince, he had killed someone in public. If he was not an idiot, then what was he? But Nye Tian had to admit that Lan Binji was indeed very strong, especially his Blackwater Ice Origin Spirit, which was extremely strange and domineering. To be honest, Nye Tian did not have much confidence in going against the Blackwater Ice Origin Spirit. Boss, why don't we surrender? We don't want the first-rank residents anymore. Jean de Bayo looked at Lan Binji with a frightened expression and whispered to Nye Tian. Nye Tian smiled faintly, his expression calm. Do I look like someone who would surrender? Jean de Bayo was taken aback. Then, with a serious expression, he shook his head. Nope. Then it's settled. Nye Tian smiled faintly. Chapter 86. There was not much suspense in the battle between Qin Feng and Yu Feiyan. With just one move, Yu Feiyan was blasted off the stage by Qin Feng. Qin Feng's primordial spirit was the Tyrant Sky Hammer. It was overbearing, surging, and abnormally powerful. Next, it was Ling Tian and Su Haojie showdown. Su Haojie was the only female among the top 8, her strength at the 8th level Origin Spirit Realm. There was no suspense in the duel between the two, but the process of the duel was very exciting. Most of them could tell that Ling Tian was intentionally letting them win. After a dozen moves, Su Haojie took the initiative to admit defeat. This match was the most entertaining to watch, but it was also the plainest of the top 8 matches. After this battle, Nye Tian was even more certain that Ling Tian was an opponent worthy of his attention. This was because Ling Tian had not used his origin soul from the beginning to the end. Up until now, Nye Tian still did not know what Ling Tian's origin soul was. After a short rest, AI Anmin once again stepped onto the martial stage. His gaze swept across the audience, and he said in a loud voice, "The top 4 of the freshman martial meet have been decided. They are Prince of Ice Knight, Qin Feng, Nye Tian, and Ling Tian." Every time a name was mentioned, there would be a cry of surprise. Those who were able to make it to the semi-finals of Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet were all martial arts geniuses. AI Amin waved his hand and announced, "New student martial gathering, top 4 battles. First battle, Prince of Bing Yi against Ling Tian. Prince of the Frozen Night." The entire place was in an uproar, all of them talking about Lan Binji. Lan Binji's method of killing Zhang Wan was too brutal. Thinking about it now, it still made one's heart palpitate. On the other hand, Ling Tian's entire journey had been smooth sailing, and he did not meet any strong opponents. Thus, he did not have an eye-catching performance. Do you guys think Ling Tian will just admit defeat? I think so. The Ice Knight Prince is way too strong. Whoever fights against him will definitely turn into ice dregs. Just wait, Ling Tian will definitely admit defeat. Hearing the whispers of the crowd, Nye Tian just shook his head and smiled. He was not worried that Ling Tian would admit defeat. He had seen the determination in Ling Tian's eyes. This kind of person would definitely not admit defeat. No matter who the opponent was, if you chose to admit defeat, then you would be letting your martial Dao heart be covered in dust. If one's martial heart was covered in dust, it would be a considerable obstacle to the martial artist's path of the martial Dao. It might even become a martial artist's martial heart demon. Therefore, martial artists with a firm heart of martial arts all understood a principle. No matter what enemy they faced, they absolutely could not admit defeat. Losing 100 times wasn't scary. What was scary was admitting defeat. Lan Binji was the first to ascend the arena. His gaze was piercingly cold and disdainful, and his entire body revealed a type of condescending arrogance. In the next moment, Ling Tian's figure appeared, and under the gazes of disbelief, he resolutely stepped onto the stage. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Ling Tian step onto the arena. These people wanted Ling Tian to ascend the stage and wanted to see him die in the hands of Lan Binji. Lan Binji had a sinister look on his face as he said, "Ling Tian, you're very courageous. You actually didn't choose to admit defeat. This prince is a little interested in you. It's a pity that I'm not interested in you." Ling Tian raised his head slightly and replied coldly. Lan Binji was startled. Then he smiled and said, "Very good. there's finally someone who dares to challenge this prince. This year's freshman martial meet is really getting more and more interesting. Other than Ye Tian, Ling Tian was the first person who dared to speak to Lan Binji in such a manner. Ling Tian obviously didn't want to continue talking nonsense with Lan Binji. His entire body's spirit energy surged as he prepared to attack. Oomph. The corner of Lan Binji's mouth curled up as the black water mysterious ice yuan spirit appeared. The black liquid enveloped its entire body like a demon god, emitting a cold, killing intent. Black water ice seal. Using the same move, a ball of black qi enveloped over and attacked Ling Tian. Everyone's hearts trembled as they recalled the scene of Zhang, one being sealed in ice. Ling Tian quickly retreated a few steps. He knew that his strength wasn't as good as Lan Binji's and didn't want to face him head-on. Blazing flame impact. With a step, Ling Tian's figure leapt up high. A flaming ancient halberd appeared in Ling Tian's hand, and a wave of raging flames rushed down, dispersing the black qi in front of him. The ancient halberd in Ling Tian's hand released a scarlet flame. His spirit energy surged violently, almost causing the ancient halberd to solidify. Seeing this scene, Nye Tian smiled and said, "The blazing ancient halberd is a fire attribute weapon spirit. It happens to be the bane of the black water mysterious ice yuan spirit." The ancient halberd was Ling Tian's yuan spirit. Ice and fire mutually countered each other. The black water mysterious ice yuan spirit and the blazing ancient halberd yuan spirit were natural enemies. Lan Binji was slightly surprised that the black water ice seal was broken, but he reacted quickly. The black water mysterious ice spun in the air and turned into a mysterious ice sharp sword in Lan Binji's hand. This prince wants to see whether your blazing ancient halberd or this prince's mysterious ice sharp sword is stronger. Lan Binji smiled coldly, his killing intent surging. The black water mysterious ice turned into a mysterious ice sharp sword, causing the surrounding temperature to drop by tens of degrees. Everyone felt a bone-chilling cold. Ling Tian landed on the ground, his entire body covered in flames. His expression was firm, calm, and fearless. "Mysterious ice sharp blade," Lan Binji shouted. The mysterious ice sharp sword shot out several ice blades that pierced through the air. Blazing flame shield. Ling Tian waved the blazing ancient halberd, forming a fire shield on the tip of the flame, blocking the ice blades. The black water mysterious ice was too strong. If the mysterious ice got close, even Ling Tian would be frozen into an ice cube. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one would have thought that Ling Tian, who was born as a commoner, would have such heaven-defying strength. He was actually on par with Prince Bingyi. On the high platform, a few important figures also looked over. "Dean Fan, what do you think of this Ling Tian?" Qin Yetian couldn't help but ask. Fan Jinwu smiled and said, "Ling Tian's martial talent is not bad. Unfortunately, he only has the strength of the 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm. The blazing ancient halberd yuan spirit hasn't formed a solid body, so he can't fight against Prince Bing Ye's Blackwater mysterious ice yuan spirit. If this old man isn't wrong, Ling Tian will lose within 3 moves." Qin Yetian nodded his head in satisfaction. He could obviously see that Ling Tian was purely using spirit energy to protect his body, not letting the Blackwater mysterious ice get close. If this continued, his spirit energy would be quickly used up, and he would lose without a doubt. Nye Tian looked at the battle in the arena and was slightly moved. If Ling Tian's strength reached the manifestation realm, he would be able to fight Lan Binji. But right now, he was still too weak. "Ling Tian, I didn't expect you to be so strong. Looks like this prince has underestimated you. But you still have to die today. If you don't die, how can this prince rest in peace?" Ling Tian roared arrogantly, the killing intent on his body almost condensing into a solid body, giving people a suffocating feeling. Ling Tian's blazing ancient halberd yuan spirit was practically the nemesis of the Blackwater mysterious ice yuan spirit. Plus, Ling Tian's strength and talent were both not bad. Lan Binji definitely wouldn't let someone who was a threat to him live. Ling Tian panted heavily. His spirit energy was already in a state of exhaustion. He had to fight on one side and protect himself with pure spirit energy at the same time to prevent being frozen by the black water mysterious ice. His spirit energy consumption was too great.